I'll call to order the select board meeting, public comment, anything not on the agenda. Yep, state your name for the record.
Sally Penrod.
Mhm.
It seems to me that everybody that I talk to in Randolph is very much in favor of getting this library cupola repaired. And yet the select board will neither approve nor reject this grant. And I don't understand why. I've said that before, but there are. Let me see what I wrote for my little notes. Change that would, in the future, what's going to change with this that's going to make you decide against it or for it? I don't know of anything. They've offered the money. All you have to do is say yes. Everybody that I talk to in town wants it. Can you answer that?
Thank you. However, with it not being on the agenda, are we allowed to discuss the topic, or is it just usually public comment? We just take it for consideration of a future agenda item?
Usually it's, yeah, public comment's more of a listening session. The idea would be to bring it back in January for more conversation. You do have a little latitude if you want, very briefly. No,
You're just
yeah,
sitting.
but it's certainly not.
You're all just sitting on your hands doing nothing.
I don't think that's the case, but I can see why you would think that.
We're planning on discussing in January, correct? With some capital planning.
Yeah, I don't know if we have the latitude to enter into a whole discussion or to even make a decision because it's not on the agenda. So it's a technical question more than that.
But we are planning on bringing it back on the agenda in January, correct?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah. That's what the request was. We're done.
Marissa Mizuko, talking for the chamber.
Hang on, Marissa. Hang on, Marissa. They're just wrapping up in the room. Somebody will call on you. Hang on, sorry.
So the topic isn't on the agenda. So to engage it or make a decision, we can't. Under public comment, you're allowed to bring things up that you want the board to consider and consider whether to take it on as a future topic item usually. This one's been on the agenda quite a bit. We've talked about it quite a bit.
And we've talked, but you haven't done anything.
Well, I think you're wrong that we haven't done anything. Because if you look at the list of grants that we have accepted and the things that we have done, they're there, you know, and maybe it is a good thing. We can get the facts out there. They're not out there accurate right now. And we can do that. But, you know, there's a whole bunch of folks that have their own version of the facts. The project doesn't have the money it needs to move forward. This $150,000, if we accept it today or we accept it when the rest of the money's been raised, isn't going to make any difference. And so we haven't said no to it. And I'll give you a scenario by which to frame this. If you had to do work on your house and you could not take a loan out and you needed a set amount of money and you went to a variety of family members and they were each willing to put in some portion of money. And one of the first ones that said, I'll put in a percentage of it, said, but I'm also going to take a perpetual easement on your property where I can have some control over what you're going to do forever. You wouldn't sign on to them first, right? You would wait and see if you needed the money just before you go to construction.
May I say something else?
Yep.
The grant is, I don't remember the term, but it's reciprocate. It's payable after the library has spent the money, not beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
We spend the money, they reimburse us.
Most of grants work that way.
Yeah. So that's counter, in my mind, that's counter to what you just said.
I think we're getting into much more of a detailed conversation that is really appropriate during public comment. I'm sorry, Sally, but
Okay.
if you have further questions, you want to talk to any of us privately, I know I'd be more than happy to continue this discussion with you. We have discussed this at some length at previous meetings. So I think we really should just leave it here for now.
Make one more public comment, just
Not about the library.
Why not?
how do we get something, okay, this is a general question, how do we get something onto the agenda for January?
The same way you've asked to have items added to the agenda in the past. With a request and details about it going to the town manager.
Well, we
A
request
question in the corner.
Hey, this
Can I,
State your name for the record.
Brooke Martinez.
Thank you, Brooke.
And this is Heather Bowman. I would like it just to be on the record that as far as I know, the library was supposed to be on the agenda. For today, because Larry had asked to have it put on, according to Trevor. When myself and a few other library people talked to Trevor on Monday. And then suddenly we were told the next day that actually it wouldn't be on the agenda. No reason was given.
Want to answer that, Larry?
And
I was unsure what was actually going to happen there. I was also thought we were gonna do it, and then I found out we weren't gonna do it. But I had also expected that we would have a lot more information at our next meeting, and that it seemed appropriate to take this up in January.
I would also like it on the record that Larry, you're the one that reached out to me when I very first put some of this information on Front Porch Forum and in a private email. And you said, hey, there's no pressure to accept this grant. And you told me some things. And I immediately called the lawyer for the HCB. And they told me.
So Heather,
no
we're going into
uncertain
the actual grant and the details of it, which is not the intention of public comment. So we're not taking any more public comment on the library.
I would
But
like
is
to
there
have this
any
on the
other
record
items
because
that
it
people wanna talk
involves
about?
A select board member and how you're doing business.
Well, if you want to talk about that, we'll put that on a future agenda too, but we
This
have
is
a full
public
agenda today.
comment, and each person is allowed 3 minutes according to your rules. You're not allowed to tell me what I can and cannot say as long as it is respectful and does not have like swearing or anything like that.
That's
So you are not following your rules right now. And I would like it on the record that the things that Larry told me, that apparently you guys at the select board believe somehow, don't know how, going straight to the horse's mouth with the lawyer for VHCB, they told me in no uncertain terms that the things that Larry had said about there being no rush was incorrect. They said that they would have, in any other circumstance, pulled the funding by now because it was taking so long. They also told me that this is the second grant that they have done and worked with y'all at the select board in this town for. And I don't remember the exact words, but she basically said you guys were very difficult and instructionist and were acting the same way as the former grant as you are with this library grant right now. And frankly, I was surprised that the lawyer would be so candid.
Well, I feel like I really do need to respond to that. I was in a private meeting with Preservation Trust and VHCB. That lawyer was not present. And we were told very directly that while they are a little frustrated, that they're willing to be patient, that they would really want to see the library get this money. They really want to see this building, which they value as much as I think anybody in this community. They want to see it be well maintained and be available for future generations. That because of that, they're willing to be patient, that this is unusual. It is something that is not normal for them. But that they were not going to be pulling the grant, that they were going to be waiting for us to go through our process, and that we were not in a rush to do so. That was what they told me very directly, and that's what I told you. So if you heard something different, I don't know what to tell you. It's kind of he said, she said at this point, but that's really what I heard, and I'm not being dishonest about it, but I can't prove it. I don't have a recording of the conversation. But that was very clearly the message that they gave us. They're frustrated. They wish we had accepted it months ago. I do too. If you've been to meetings about this in the select board, you would have heard me sit here in this very seat at least 2, I think 3 times where I've said very clearly that I think we should accept this grant. So I'm with you. We need to do this. But I also did hear very clearly from the Preservation Trust and the VHCB that they are willing to work with us. They're not really happy about it, but they're not saying do it tomorrow or else.
Okay, any other public comment? Not,
Ben Rapson. The meeting notes have been insufficient. The use of Zoom means that Zoom can give full transcripts of what's being said. Those transcripts should be immediately made public to the folks of the town, and there's no reason not to do that. AI is not good, but this is one way in which it can be used for the betterment of democracy, and there's no reason to delay in that as a very transparent habit and responsibility of the select board. I was very disappointed to see the notes from the last meeting after having heard from multiple people about the content of the meeting itself. It felt empty, it felt misleading, and it felt inaccurate. And there's no reason for that. So I am taking everyone on the select board with the assumption of best intentions, that you're here working for the sake of the people of the town, that you're taking up issues that matter to us, that you are representatives of us, that when we declare in many voices that we care about something, that you will not just push it away or not just give it lip service, but will assume it as your charge, as your responsibility to take it seriously and to prioritize it, whether that is something that is up for discussion or approval, or whether that is fair, respectful dialogue with townspeople at meetings such as this. So please release detailed transcript of select board meetings from now on. Thanks.
Transcripts are not required by statute, so
Please
just,
do
it would be an extra.
It would be what?
It would be beyond what statute requires. Our minutes include what statute requires currently. So just so everybody has a baseline as to why they look the way they look based on past practice and statute. I mean, you can't do more, but that's why we do what we do.
Thank you for that.
and the video, right? We make the video.
We have the Zoom links that are
recording.
available, and then Orca has recordings of the meetings that they are. So there are a
And
couple of
that's-
different options to watch as well.
And that's great for those who have accessibility to watch a video. That's great for people who have the time to listen to the meeting. For those who don't, and for those who prefer it in writing, and for those who want to hold each other accountable in this town, whether they're elected members or just townspeople, it's very important that the words are recorded and released. Is there a reason why it isn't a practice already? Because this technology's been very available and in common practice for some time now.
So this is public comment, so it's not question and answer.
Well, I can ask the question. If you guys don't want to answer it, you don't have to, but I can ask it, so,
Is there any other public comment?
cool, thanks.
Yes.
You had yours.
Well, Marissa's been trying to bust in for a bit, so go ahead, Marissa.
I'm Marissa Mizuko, speaking for the chamber. We were contacted last month about fireworks and whether we would be able to take it on. We are not able to take on doing fireworks. The chamber is only staffed for 12 hours a week. So that is a huge ask on top of the parade that I am already organizing. So the fireworks are still on hold for the town of Randolph at this moment. They would need to know by the end of the month whether or not the town of Randolph would like to have the fireworks for the 4th of July. And though they would prefer at least half payment in January, they can push it out until town meeting if requested to. But it is something that either a committee needs to be formed by other organizations or the town if the fireworks are going to continue, because the entities that have done it in the past are no longer able to. So I'm bringing it to the select board's attention and hope that something can be done, but I cannot, and the chamber cannot put any more effort towards the 4th than we already do.
Thank you. Anyone else who hasn't spoken? This was public comment. Right. Moving on, we have approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve?
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consent calendar.
Motion to approve?
All those in favor? Aye. New business. Do we have folks here? I see one that were applicants for board positions. Committee positions.
John's here. James Lawson couldn't make it. He said he's willing to meet you, but have some time, a different time. I can't think of one person that actually works remotely here, but was the town in Massachusetts said he wasn't gonna be able to pick on the position.
That's Scott, who emailed me as well for.
And Scott, I actually never met, but
Scott was in the mix, but he withdrew. Or stepped back.
we didn't tell me that one, so.
Okay.
So we do have one person.
So, folks that are on committees that got elected, we just wanted to, we want to have the conversation, sort of background, what you want to do, why, sort of what it is and what you bring to the table.
Well, my background is in finance, 50 years of my own company. I was also the treasurer of Orange County Mental Health for 10 years. And so I think I can bring some financial expertise to looking at the budget, which I assume is the function of the budget committee. And I would hope that in addition to looking at the budget before it's done, there would be some monitoring procedures during the year to look at the shortfalls in tax revenues versus the budget that we talked about at the last meeting and that sort of thing.
I know your background, so it's probably not fair to me. We want to ask some questions, but if anybody else has them.
What made you apply for the position, John?
Why I'm retired. Half the time.
You have some time now, right? Yes. It can be challenging to serve when you're working still.
Right,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Do we have any other questions for him?
I move that we appoint John Farrow to the Lake Committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no one else.
I don't see any of the other interested parties online. You in the room? I would say one of the things we've got up on the website now are some vacancy listings for the planning commission and DRB openings. With that is a volunteer form that Alex helped us put together, so we can standardize the inputs, so we don't get emails that have sort of disparate pieces, or you get one sentence from one person and a whole CV from somebody else. So this will hopefully standardize that. They should all go through Judy in our office, not because we're control freaks, but that's so that we make sure we know who's where. We keep the head count, we schedule with you, we can then route them back out to the committees. They'll just provide better controls. So then these process elements become a little cleaner. So we've got some of those pieces up already. See how that form goes. We'll make adjustments as needed. It's fairly generic in terms of stuff it asks for, interest, background, any skills you bring, basic information. We'll at least have the same baseline for every candidate.
Have on there any information of saying like you're applying to this and like here's the process that will happen after this or anything like that? Or could we add some, like a little,
No, not with the form, but that's something we could add.
did they get like an email response that they got, like whatever through? Some forms do that.
It's a Google form, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we'll say like, thank you, like here's
Yeah.
further process that maybe, yeah.
We'll look to make those adjustments too.
So just make communication a little bit easier for people. Thank you guys for doing that. That's been really helpful.
All right, next up, we have the listers errors and emissions report. This report.
Saw Mindy come in and she declined to sit up here, so. Who's here?
Yeah, I have like the annual changes to the grand list since it was launched, the as-built was launched in July. Up until now, any errors and emissions that have changes pre-assigned. I do have 2 more current uses that are coming through, but they haven't arrived yet from the state. So there'll be a second current use thing. And and you guys will have to sign it. But I have what is done now. I can give it to Trevor or Judy for your signatures.
So it was in the board packet. Does anybody have any questions on any of those? Comments? None.
So we have to have a motion and then a signature, or
I was just looking to make sure that. Yep. So be for a motion to approve it.
so moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Your signatures too?
Yeah, well, we your signatures and then you give it to Tammy. And then Tammy will lodge it in the back of the grand list. And the as-built grand list.
Thank you, Mimi.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks. Presentation of the walk bike master plan.
We have Rita and Brian from Two Rivers with us. I'm gonna make one of them co-host. I'm guessing, Rita, you're gonna wanna
Yes, please.
step into that role.
Perfect.
So you should be set. They're gonna take you through the presentation. This is the final draft. As we walked out the steps, we said we'd end up here. So the walkthrough, this is incorporates the feedback that we've received, any additional information that's come in. This is separate than the scoping study that's also moving along and will be here in January. Either 15th to the 22nd is what we're aiming for tentatively. We'll send that over to B-Trans for some review as well. So those 2 things are connected, but not the same product.
Yes. So I just shared my screen. I can't see anybody. So Trevor, can you visually confirm you can see the presentation up?
I can.
Perfect. All right. Hello, everyone. Rita Cito, from Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Planning Commission. Brian, my colleague, is also online as well. And we are going to just walk through the walking and bicycle master plan that we assisted the town in creating. So just a quick overview. We're going to do a quick introduction of the project, a little bit of the background, and just a recap of the plan areas. So this initiative kind of came about a few years ago. We at the Regional Planning Commission have a planning contract with the Agency of Transportation. And at the time, there was a little bit of extra planning money focused on bike ped planning. I had reached out to Trevor to see if the town was interested in developing a walk bike master plan. I know that there were, different bike ped projects going on, and thought this might be a useful way to provide the town something, valuable to kind of use as a strategy to move forward with planning on bike ped infrastructure in the future, and also, benefiting the town at no cost as well. So we began early in 2024 with the steering committee from the town. We had Trevor, Jeff Grout, Mark Rosalvo. We had John Kaplan from the Walk, Bike Roll Randolph group, and Brian and I from the Two Rivers staff. So we kind of began doing phase one, which is basically collecting information about the existing network. So we looked at sidewalk inventory. We looked at possible bike routes, if there were any. We also inventoried the crosswalks in town. We also conducted speed studies, basically around the village where it becomes a class one and, town highway. And then we looked at specifically around downtown Randolph, Randolph Center, and then looking at East Randolph. So those were our three study areas that we were collecting data. Phase two was also focusing on public engagement. So from that, we developed a list of in-person public engagement opportunities. The main one that we were advertising was the public forum, which was at the Randolph House. And then the steering committee kind of scattered and kind of took turns with reaching out to the rest of these community events and just getting the word out about the Walk Bike Master Plan and just collecting input from as many residents and users as possible. We also developed a online survey. We had a fairly robust response. We had over 207 survey takers, which is pretty impressive for surveys as they kind of go. So here are some of the just key results. We did the sidewalk inventory, and on the map, we kind of categorized them based on the surface condition. You can kind of see from critical, which is in red, all the way up to dark blue, which is in good condition. We also highlighted in purple the potential sidewalk segments, acknowledging at the time the town had recently got awarded the sidewalk scoping study that focused on Weston Street and then the section from Gifford all the way to the Shaw's Plaza. And then this is just a quick snapshot of all the poor and critical sidewalk sections. You can kind of see a lot of the detail that we did within the sidewalk inventory. We categorize them, what side of the road, to and from, the type of surface, did it have curb, the length of, and then like the width as well. And then just like general comments about the section there. And this is kind of in just alphabetical order for the road name. It's not in any prioritized fashion at this time. So we also did traffic studies. I know that speed management was a big concern in town. So in the summer of 2024, we did put tubes down. Basically, you can kind of see at the edges of the village where it becomes a class one. You can kind of see a little bit of the average speed results there. I know I provided a more detailed memo to Trevor specifically on the traffic study. But overall, with 25 miles an hour kind of posted in the village, folks are definitely driving more than that. And then I also kind of color coded the more heavily traveled main roads in town to show the volume of traffic that has been displayed there. Bike racks were another piece of the infrastructure. We understand that, there aren't necessarily the traditional bike lanes in town. We know that it's very narrow through the village. But we're also wanting to showcase that there are some bike infrastructure in town. So we wanted to show, at least with bike racks, where are there bike racks in the village and where are there some potential that we could, have the town add in the future. So aside from all of that, like we said earlier, we understood that as a parallel effort, scoping study from Weston to the senior center to Main Street, and then from Gifford to Shaw's, that is kind of ongoing. And so we were trying to coordinate their efforts and try to make sure both studies kind of coordinated with each other and complemented each other. Also, VTrans is preparing the next paving project through the village in a few years. And so knowing that was coming, the committee kind of prepared a list of recommendations to try to speak with the paving project team at VTrans to see if they are able to kind of coordinate some of those recommendations while they were doing the paving project. Some things, some of these examples is possibly striping bike lanes that are outside the village zone where it kind of opens up. There's a lot more shoulder to kind of accommodate for that. We also identified a few intersections that see if they could kind of reconfigure that. For example, the 12 and 12A intersection, but across from the Cumberland Farms. That's always a very wonky intersection. We've asked them to kind of consider if it was possible as part of the paving project, if they could, possibly reconfigure that intersection to like a basic T so that it's not just like, here's a Y here, here's a Y here. Same thing with the Wallace Hill and the 12A intersection. Similar request for reconfiguring that intersection. It's a very wide pavement apron there, and so trying to narrow it back up to kind of improve the intersection there. And then finally, looking at possibly a sidewalk extension out to the rec fields from Wallace Hill out there. We understand that there are a lot of users, residents, students from the school, from the after-school program that like to access the rec fields. We understand there aren't any at the moment other than the crosswalk over to there, but to kind of complete that little small gap. And then also possibly requesting those rectangular rapid flashing beacons at, that VTrans can kind of consider at these crosswalk locations. And these crosswalk locations are also incorporated into the final master plan. So here are some of the overall recommendations. We looked at the entire sidewalk network. We looked at specifically the poor and the critical condition ones, looking at the length, how long is that section that is poor or critical. We kind of highlighted them, and we didn't necessarily recommend, say, we are going to do, we recommend to the town that we're going to do, this street first and then this street and then this street. we kind of left it fairly flexible for the town to make that decision, and you can decide which sections of sidewalk would be sort of the best priority to kind of move forward. But for short term, we have categorized the sections of road to be either, possibly short term fixes, medium term, or like long term. So for short term, we looked at, possibly repainting the existing crosswalks just to keep them very visible, especially especially in the spring when it's nice out and people are moving around. Improving signage and lighting to increase safety at the crosswalks. We know there's lots of crosswalks in the village now, but sometimes drivers kind of just auto drive through and they may not notice pedestrians waiting at the crosswalk, waiting to kind of cross there. Purchasing and installing additional bike racks. Purchasing and installing rectangular rapid flashing beacons at those crosswalk locations that we recommended. And then, replacing curb ramps that are not necessarily ADA compliant on the existing sidewalks, just to ensure there's like smooth transition from the crosswalks there. Medium term, again, replace or existing sidewalk sections that are in poor critical condition. We looked at sections of road that are going to be longer than 150 feet. And then, looking at the intersections that are flagged, like the 12 and 12A by the Cumbies, and then the Wallace Hill one. Those are challenging intersections to cross as pedestrians, and trying to either incorporate them into the paving project if possible, or perhaps as a separate project scope. And then finally, long term, 10 to 20 years. These ones typically do take a while. A lot of these can be, if there's not an existing sidewalk there, I'm thinking of the existing scoping study that you are currently working on from the senior center on Weston out to Main Street, and or from Gifford all the way to Shaw's, because there's no existing sidewalk. The next logical step would be for the town to apply for a full design engineering grant and construction. VTrans has a few of those federal bike ped grants, but they do take time because of the federal requirements. You have to go through NEPA and right of way and all those fun stuff. Those do take a while. And then just, looking at some of the other long-term, other sections of sidewalk that the town may consider looking at connecting. And then this is just a quick compilation of possible funding sources that, could be available that the town could potentially navigate through in parallel efforts. You don't have to do them like one at a time. There's obviously the significant federal bike ped grant, but there's also like a small scale version that you could do manageable project chunks at a time to kind of gain momentum and just, slowly chip at. And these are some of the other, funding sources that could be available to do that. And from that, I will stop my presentation. And Brian and I are happy to take any questions. Our approach for this master plan, we tried to be as conservative as possible, knowing it's kind of your first walk bike plan. We know you have a lot of infrastructure already, So just kind of, focusing on tweaking what you have at this time to kind of get the momentum going, so to speak, was kind of like our framework for kind of developing the plan the way it is. So, thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board members?
I have one question. I read in there the traffic study was by the bridge, for the, speed. Are you meaning like the main bridge over the river or the bridge coming in like by the golf course?
The one by the golf course, because that's where the speed transitions to 25 as you enter the village. Um, so folks
so
are coming down the hill on 66 and, they're entering the village. It's kind of the first 25-mile-hour sign that you're entering the village. And we also understand that, they're speeding beyond that. But that seemed like an initial logical spot to collect the data to see if they are complying with the initial speed as you're entering the village.
But there was no speed study done like inside like the more designated downtown area?
There was the only one that was right in the village, I believe, was by the crosswalk by the Playhouse.
Okay,
Yeah.
there was a speed study done there?
Yes.
Okay,
Same study, but they put the tubes in different,
gotcha, okay.
spots.
I don't
And if
remember
that
those.
is something the town would like us to do, like this upcoming summer, it's like, hey, we would like to see the speed on the bridge. We can do that this summer.
Okay. And then, this is more of a Blackboard question, but what kind of authority do we have to actually change? Like the lines, I know Salisbury Square, we actually don't own, like, how much of this is actually in the realm of things that we can do?
A lot of it is when you're talking about sidewalks, crosswalks,
Like painting lines?
signage, line painting, yeah.
Sounds pretty
Especially
good.
at,
They came for last summer.
Yeah,
then when you get off the class one areas, which are, they're the shared responsibility of the main highways, then we have even greater latitude because they're solely ours.
right, yeah. I
When it
guess
comes
that's
to speed limits, that's where we're we're pinned in a little bit. In terms of we couldn't go from 25 to 15 on Main Street without, not exactly even sure what that would take. There's usually some resistance to go below.
Because with the
Unless there's
classes.
significant enforcement to like really, hey, you're going 15.
You go to the traffic committee and all that.
Yeah, you have to get a special, essentially, so to apply for a variance is one way to think about it.
So we have a little bit of leeway, but there is restrictions on that Main Street corridor.
Yeah, I mean, it's already at 25, so
Right.
you're talking probably more built environment, other behavioral nudges, those types, and enforcement. I mean, the only truly effective strategy in some locations is speed enforcement of some kind, but on Main Street, you can do other things maybe to bend that curve.
Yeah, and then we have the parking alongside, so I've never, I mean, maybe I've seen it, but I can't think of seeing like a white line and then parking spaces. Right, and so most of our Main Street is lined with parking.
Mhm.
So like adding those white lines. Well, it seems awkward to me, or I haven't seen it, I guess, so I guess I just.
Don't know that we'd add travel lines. You might see the sharrows, so the little bike on,
Right,
some share the road type signs, just because of the widths, especially as you park cars.
yeah,
But then when you get out from that corridor, there might be some opportunity to add, maintain the 8-9 foot travel lanes or whatever it's supposed to be.
and the project that's going to happen with V-Trans, it's supposed to be 2027, right? Are they just repaving, or are they like?
There's
There's a
some,
lot of talk of like modifying all of these things, and are we modifying sidewalks, like what are we, or what are they?
right,
So they don't necessarily, in their scope, they don't necessarily replace sidewalks, but they do replace like the curbs by the crosswalks if you're crossing and it's not compliant. If you have those detectable warning surface pieces that indicate like you're going to cross a crosswalk, if those are not compliant, that will also be included in the paving project. So they will replace those and like restrict the crosswalk and all that stuff. But they won't be replacing sections of sidewalk in their paving project.
Thank you.
But there's other grants specific for sidewalks. So
Correct.
should we apply
Yes.
for them at the same time?
We
Do
can.
other
Yep.
towns do?
Yes, right now, I'm managing a sidewalk project in Bethel right now on South Pleasant Street from Sand Hill to the high school. They're hoping to expand the width. And they also have a class 1 paving project coming through 2027, 28. So we're trying to also coordinate with them and also get the sidewalk done before they come and pave, so we're not ripping up pavement again.
Usually we try to do the sidewalk the year before. Then you pay for it up to the, or you do it around. And it might be,
I have one last question. If you'll allow me. I know you guys want me, you're not done, it's tired of me. When you're talking about like, adding sidewalks that we don't have already, is there any like way to kind of get an estimate of what that actual residual cost is? So that means we need to maintain them. So how long does the sidewalk last? So are we looking at in 10 years, we need to do major maintenance on that? Is it 20? How much will it cost to plow, like, and clear those and plow sidewalks? But, so is there any way, because, you know, when you're buying into something, you have to think about those costs overall, how it's gonna hit our budget, long term. Is that something that you would help us with if we were trying to do that? Of kind of calculating that?
We can try to calculate that. Yeah. I don't have a number offhand, obviously. Yeah, but I mean, like, what is the town's existing maintenance cost for the sidewalks now? You know, how many highway staff do you have to do snow removal right now? Are there sections of sidewalk? Well, I know, Trevor had mentioned they recently fixed the sidewalk by the laundromat, like recently. So it's like, was it asphalt or like the previous year? So, right. So you have some of that cost there to kind of help. But again, it depends if you're fixing just the concrete sections. Are you pulling up the granite curbing? Are you widening the sidewalk from, 3-4 feet to 5 feet? So those are factors that need to get calculated in.
Sure. I just think, like that's kind of part of the danger. You can get grant money to add infrastructure, but then you have to maintain it. And I think that's kind of some of the issues overall. So then the more and more infrastructure you have, the higher budget you need in order to maintain those on a yearly basis and to keep up with them too. So I think it's important to consider.
Yep.
That's all my questions. Thank you, everyone.
And I have one.
Yep.
I feel slightly embarrassed I didn't bring this up at a future time when we've been talking about this, but there's a section of road along this section along Pleasant Street where there's no sidewalk between Maple and Highland, and then also between Highland and Fairview. And it seems like if we did it right now, people do walk that stretch in the road on Pleasant, and it's not super safe, especially in snowy conditions. And it seems like that would add us a nice sort of loop around. So when someone walks on one day, a new sidewalk down Maple, they get to the end of Maple and they could make a left and go over to Highland and continue their way around. I'm just wondering if you thought about that little stretch there and
Yes. So
and why maybe it wasn't included in your recommendation.
I believe it is. So one of the so that stretch actually would be perfect for the V-Trans has a small scale grant category.
No, it's not on, it's not
Okay.
there.
Where are you then? Larry?
Between Highland and Maple.
Up on Pleasant, you said?
On Pleasant, yeah, yeah, there you go.
We talked about other section enough. I went right there.
Mm-hmm,
Right here, sorry.
yeah.
Okay. So, VTrans has a small scale grant to address examples such as these where it's like a missing gap in a network.
Yeah.
This would be perfect if the town would like to apply for a small scale bike ped grant. The next one's coming up in June. It's a 50-50 match. The maximum is 75,000. So 75, 150,000 max, just construction. The town could, if they would like to prioritize that section, apply for that and construct a new sidewalk segment there and kind of close the loop if they so choose. But I didn't know which, there are quite a few little gaps in town, so we did not necessarily prioritize them in order because we felt like the decision should be kind of up to the select board on, which sections they would like to kind of tackle first.
Sure, no, thank you for that response.
Mhm.
So Rita, a couple of pieces that I picked up on. The title of the report is the Town of Randolph Sidewalk. But there's a segment in Randolph Center that's been plowed by the residents and mowed for quite a few years that is a sidewalk, even though it's not concrete or pavement. And there's been a lot of conversation in prior years about going for grant funding. They would connect from the VTC campus up through past Floyd's. It would give access down for the campground as well as the Gifford or Menig campus. And I saw it was mentioned on there. It didn't mention the Floyd's North segment, which is also maintained by the same person. But that's been out there. We've talked about that many times about trying to get funding to actually turn that into a sidewalk. And I think it's important if this is gonna be a town plan, that side of the village is accounted for.
Okay.
And there's also a project that's it's been discussed. There was a scoping study done for Route 14. And it would connect from the church down to the old East Randolph Elementary School. And I know that back years ago, when they closed the elementary schools and consolidated them, there was a lot of conversation at the time, and I have not seen the purchase and sales agreement on that. But there was supposed to be a playground accessible to the public at the old school building.
It's the old school.
And the sidewalk was supposed to go from there down through across, past the Route 66 intersection, and that it went down to the church was where they were ending it.
When you say the old school building, it's a residence now.
No, that's the other side. It's the Clara Martin Center.
Oh, the East Valley. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
there was playground equipment, there was everything in there when it sold, but I think they've removed it. And they actually throw people out of there that go down there to use it, but I know at the time closing it, there was a whole conversation about it.
Is the scoping study available? We were unaware of that portion, but we happy to include it into the master plan.
I haven't seen it for a long time. It was done quite a while ago. We ran into, there was some right-of-way challenges in the area of the town with the old hall down there. The property on the opposite side, actually. So I don't have it, but somebody must. It's gotta be buried somewhere on somebody's shelf.
Okay.
But I do think if it's gonna be a town plan piece, we should be doing, or we just title it for Randolph Village Plan.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know
will
that
add
there
those
was,
two. I will add those two sections in as like potential considerations.
the Randolph Center one is active year round. It's not paved and it's not concrete, but it is used, it's mowed, it's plowed in the wintertime. George Daniel plows it. Has for years.
Taking my kids up.
You can see the path right there in front of Jay Hooper's house.
Yeah. Yeah, there it is. Perfect. Okay, good to know. Thank you.
The only other one I had is on page 108, question 5. The question in the table should match the question that's being asked. It didn't get changed from the.
Thank
table
you.
before. Any other comments from the board? Comments on the bike
I
walk?
see Anne
Yeah,
Kaplan online.
I got it, Rita.
Oh, thank you.
Buddy here. Seeing none, we'll go to online. Ian?
Yeah, it's actually John. I couldn't figure out how to change the name. No, I just wanted to, and I'm speaking on behalf of Walk, Bike, and Roll Randolph, and I wanted to thank the town and RPC for moving forward with this plan. I think it's a very exciting first step and gives the town government a lot of information to use to move forward with, picking away at these walking and biking improvements. So I think this combined with the scoping study that's ongoing, and the possibilities with the class 1 paving project that V-Trans will be coming through with in 2027, I think that's all kind of sets us up to be more, have a better system for people who walk and bike in all parts of the town. And I just wanted a very minor point, but I know in the plan there, the table, I believe it's like the poor or critical and poor condition sidewalk segments. Each of those has a construction cost associated with it. So I know that information is in there, and I know Stephanie asked a very good question about the ongoing maintenance, which hopefully we can come up with some numbers for that. But anyway, and I'm very appreciative that the town was willing to incorporate the vast majority of the comments that our group made into the plan. So anyway, I'm excited about this and look forward to the town moving forward with all this going forward.
I think that's the end of our comments.
Actually, could I just add a little comment?
Only if you identify yourself.
Yeah. My name is Eva Loomis, and I'm part of Walk Bike Roll Randolph also. And I just wanted to add to what John said, that this plan benefits drivers as well. Things like the flashing pedestrian beacon are really helpful for drivers, especially this time of year when it's so dark and so cold out. Snowing, raining, really hard to see pedestrians as you're driving too. That's all. This is Heather Bowman. Now, I haven't had another public comment on this. It was brought up that there were concerns about when you add infrastructure, then you have to account for upkeeping it. And I know that the town of Randolph is considering doing a RFQ and cataloging all the things that need maintenance and fixing. When will that be happening, and will this be part of that?
That's a building facility only
building.
assessment. That should be published sooner than later. We have a few square footage measurements we need to add.
What about for sidewalks in front of public buildings or town-owned buildings?
The master plan identifies the condition inventory and provides some segments, and then those will get baked into capital planning later on. Which then gets reviewed every year, so that you has to update based on condition, and then we're gonna have to stack a few different things if we want to achieve some of these goals. So it's also figuring out which grant, right time, right project. So we've got 3 potential projects from scoping study to figure out when we want to try to get on those. If we went for a bigger dollar one that's federal dollars, that's a longer timeline. How do we want to factor that in, plus the annual maintenance type stuff to improve the network? So those all have to, this data then also has to sort of be applied to that over, we usually do a 5-year plan and then adjust it every year, and then every year we add a year to the end as we move forward through time, so.
So next steps on this is, we end up with a final version of the plan and then the board
Yeah.
votes to adopt it
Yeah,
or accept it.
and we'll use this in some of the draft data from the scoping study, so then when we get into January, when we get into budgets, we talk capital budgets, you'll see the stuff you see in those tables slide over into those documents as we move them from plan to hopefully getting them done reliably through time.
Great. Thanks, Rita.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Brian. Still up there. I got these little squares to try to figure out who's on there.
Thank you
Alright.
again.
Consider an appeal to renaming of Sherman Lane to Sand Oak Lane. So on the technical side, there's no formal anything for these, right?
Nope. Not that we're aware of, so we're borrowing from other processes to approximate one.
Hang on, I'm getting through the bike plan. If they would form,
Page 124 is the agenda item description. I'll
lift
show you.
them into the solid waste. That's what I missed.
The big packet.
All right, so. I think what we have is, Faye, who's here. Wants to present a case for the board to reconsider. Right, the vote that took place in October. Right.
Yeah, speak for me, I can't hear.
I'll have to help out. Faye doesn't hear very well and stuff like that, so if everybody could speak up too, it would be helpful. For Faye and Doris also too. We had come in September for the meeting about the road name change of Sherman Lane. And we had a lot of evidence and a lot of support about not changing it. And it was to our amazement to find out in October that it was changed. And we're trying to really grasp the idea of what the justification was of changing the name from Sherman Lane to a new road name that typically the name change will only be approved if existing name is confusing or if the change is deemed necessary to promote public welfare and safety. The name change didn't do that. You folks approved that name. Or Jeff did, and the 911 coordinator, the state did too. So it was already approved. I'm not quite understanding why the town is opening up this can of worms about changing road names that are named after the legacy of somebody in our community. The Shermans provided a lot over many years. There's a lot of road names in this community after individuals. You go around the country, they're named after individuals. The name should be Sherman Lane. It can't be somebody's personal preference who just bought it. Somebody could change Blaisdell Lane, somebody could change Tilt Lane. Where does it end? These are people that have provided to our communities that are important assets. Don't understand it. Can somebody justify why or explain at least?
So what we got was, we got the request and then they came in the following month. And it's a new road, so it's not a long time road or a long time piece there. they had coordinated with the state through the E911 board on preferences of road names. And actually asked them, because one of the comments that was made was that they wouldn't approve it. They actually took it to the E911 board and came back with emails from them that said they would approve it and that their preference is that a name not be used for a road. So
That's not a requirement in enhanced board, that's not a ruling, they approved this under Sherman Lane, they've already approved, the 911 board in the town has approved it as Sherman Lane. You guys are taking that back, you are canceling the name of Sherman Lane.
well, the property owners came in. They
Three
built
of
the
them.
case and asked if we would consider changing it. The
Yeah.
state said they would approve it.
Mhm.
And so the board voted to change it.
Yeah, and we asked you not to, and there was a bunch of community input about why not to. And you still just like railroad it through, and I mean. It's a little disheartening, to be quite honest with you. It's just how I feel, and. That's how we do things now. I mean,
Well, it was,
with Scott hasn't reached out to us, then it's been like. Fate doesn't do computers and stuff like that, so we missed that meeting, we weren't aware of it. He was sent to go get information. And we found out that there was a meeting and there was a decision. It just really does not wash well, to be honest with you. I mean,
I'm
if
not
that's,
sure what the,
I mean, these are community
on.
members that we're preserving their legacy and what they've done.
well, it was a brand new road, right? It's a private road
That had got a
Right.
permit from the state.
that it needed a name because there's actually 4 lots,
Mhm,
right? But there's one house on it now,
mhm.
another one potentially going on, right? Or maybe it has.
Sorry. She was against it.
Well, actually, she supported it, this name change. She was against it being named after that family. But she actually supported Sand
Oh, I
Oak
think that's.
or Sand.
About.
He submitted a message with her where she did.
She hadn't told me.
Or, yeah, I'm just here helping out, and just it doesn't really.
Well, all the
foster-
people that had property there were for it. So the owners of the property were supportive.
So if all the people on Tilton Road come and they want to change name, you're gonna change that name, or Blaisdell Drive in East Randolph, you're gonna change that too. He owns all the property there, you're comfortable with that?
Well, it's not Blaisdell Drive anymore because they got thrown up a few years ago.
There's a sign there though, right? And that's a 911 address, doesn't make it. There is a sign there,
Is it still there?
there's a 911 address, I mean, that's what we're talking about,
But I think the answer is yes, Paul, that if somebody comes in and builds a case and whatnot, there's a process for that. It's outlined in
Yeah,
the
but in the
911
whole-
guidance. It's.
Whole 911 board, when you read through justification, has to be safety, promote public welfare and safety, it has to be confusing. To the people, it's not just someone's personal preference, it says it clearly, it can't be
The
just. someone's
911
personal.
board approved it. For the 911 board staff or whatever.
They approved Sherman Lane now too.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going back, you're canceling what was already approved.
I don't
That's
know.
all, and you guys are, I mean, you folks, it was moved by Larry and second by Stephanie, do you guys have anything to say, or? You heard our arguments when we were here in September. And there was other people and neighbors, I mean, I just don't understand it, I guess.
I mean, everybody on the property was in agreement to the change and 911 said they preferred it. I honestly think this is kind of a neighborhood dispute. I mean, it's a private lane, we're kind of stepping in the weeds here, just like. What our actual. Like what,
You could have just left the Sherman Lane and left it alone, and somebody would have just said, we only change it for these certain reasons. That's what should have come from the town. You just don't, I mean, this happened on Ryle Lane off of Elm Street, and they told them then you couldn't change it. That was Major McLaughlin wanted it changed, thought it should be a different name, and they didn't embrace that. Now we're embracing road name changes. that were permitted.
It's a tough situation. I've never experienced this on the board before, so I can't speak to what happened in the past.
I don't remember Mariah Lane being.
That's where railings are.
It
Major
sure
office,
is.
he did not
Yep.
like it being named.
But
after
did
his granddaughter.
everybody that was on there agree? That
It was all owned by Ron Rilling at that point, It hadn't been
named after his granddaughter.
after his granddaughter, and he didn't think that it was appropriate, or that they
Right,
were
but in
ever.
this case, all the property owners, the properties that are owned there, they agreed.
I still dispute that. What I've been hearing is that there's one person that hasn't been in agreement, and the other two property owners are his son and family members.
There was a message.
That they were able to get, because they
Yeah.
helped them out.
There was a
To make that
message that
happen.
her preference was Sandy Fox over Sand Oak, but that she liked the idea of it not being a name.
Yeah. I just disagree. I just don't think it's the right way to treat people or the process and stuff like that. We just don't change things because of someone's personal preference when you read the stuff that I gave to you folks. It says it right there.
I also would like to say, like,
If they would,
It was Pleasant Street. And so it got changed from Pleasant Street, because the address was Pleasant Street. for
yeah,
quite a
because
while.
there's no house there, it's zero Pleasantry. That's like any piece of land in town. Until there's gonna be a structure that got subdivided, which we did. Then 911 address when he had to come get his zoning permit, and Jeff approved it.
And some of what the folks that got it had showed was communications where they weren't part of naming it, even though they were in a.
That's
purchase
a
agreement.
small stretch of the truth. Cause he asked me if I would name it after his family. And I said, no, it's my last project and I'm gonna name it Sherman Lane. He had discussed that with me ahead of time. So he's stretching the truth to you a little bit.
I think there was some emails or there was some documents in that packet that were talking about that.
When it came before the board, my recollection is that all the landowners, including Leanne, were in favor of that change. And what made me, and I wasn't in favor of the original change to Cameron Lane, I didn't think that was appropriate. And then when we saw that the E911 board's communications indicated that they really try to discourage folks from naming roads after people for exactly this kind of reason. That's what made me think, well, yeah, that probably is for the best, and then we move forward on it. That was the piece that really made me think, okay, that does seem reasonable, because they were like, yeah, we try not to name roads after people because it has the potential.
It causes this.
Yeah, but look, and we've got Kelly Way, we've got Tilton Road. I mean, you go all around town, that's our heritage. That's who we are. You can't cancel that. I understand that there's.
Well, this is now, those were done a
These are
long
people that
time
have
ago.
contributed to our community
So
for many
this
years,
is-
40, 50 years.
I hear you, Paul.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what I was thinking in the moment.
Yeah.
When we had the meeting.
We'll go have a conversation with Leanne and make sure that that was what her wishes were. It's not what we remember or what I've heard. Once again, I'm here to help out Faye and Doris. Faye, you had anything more, or?
No,
It
I
doesn't
just-
sound like they're gonna.
Oh, I'll go back and see if I can find in the packet where she sent that message. And so you have it, just to be.
Yeah, no, I would love that. I'd love to close the
Like, hey,
the
wait,
loop on it, 'cause
where's this?
my frustrations are getting really deep with the community right now, so.
She had been talking to me right along that Sherman Lane was fine. She didn't want to change her address.
Yeah, I'm not, sorry, Dustin, I was looking through the 10-6 packet, I wasn't seeing Leanne's name come up except from the minutes from the prior meeting. I don't know. if
There is
it's-
one, it's in the packet that came in from Scott.
She was on Skype, she had said we had watched it on TV, she was out of the rec field on the September meeting. Said she was against it. I don't know, understand where you guys are coming from. That you're recollecting that she was any different, like she gave different testimony at the October meeting that we weren't aware of.
Yeah, there was written,
Yeah.
yeah, she was against the Cameron Lane change because she didn't want it to be a name as well. But then she went.
Oh, we'll have a conversation with her.
Yeah.
You guys don't have to spend a lot of time.
I'll write it down.
Once again, I'll have a phone conversation with somebody. I don't need.
Yeah, no, I would just give you that, so you know what the board relied on.
Okay. You folks all set? Or-
Yep, you are.
Yeah, I don't. Thanks for your service to the town.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, guys.
You got more on the topic?
Yeah.
Just identify yourself.
Ben Rapson, it sounds like some of the frustration is arising from there being a lack of precedent or a lack of clarity around how and when a road name can and cannot be changed. The conversation started, I overheard Selectboard saying, is there precedent? Do we have process established for this?
Yeah.
I think it would benefit the board and the town if there was follow-up from this stating, from now on, this is the process, this is what you can expect. This is when we change, change or support such things.
Yeah, it's all by state statute.
By state statute.
Yep, that's the
State
precedent.
911 board
Yeah.
controls it.
It's
It
not- it's
defines it right in there quite clearly, what the steps are, where the town has to take action, where,
Sure.
what they have to submit.
It's not anything that we can control, state statute.
Cool.
All right, moving along. Adopting of the Mountain Alliance Solid Waste Implementation Plan.
Yeah, hi. I'm on Zoom. Hope I didn't scare everyone.
Is our contractor for the Alliance?
Yes, my name is Abby Bruzis. I work for Casella Waste. Casella manages the Mountain Alliance Solid Waste Implementation Plan. I guess I'll just give a little background about what the Solid Waste Implementation Plan is, what the Mountain Alliance is in this case, and then we can do sort of a run through of what the top of the line changes are in this SWIP program versus the last one. So SWIP stands for Solid Waste Implementation Plan. The Vermont Solid Waste rules require every municipality in Vermont to have a SWIP or to be part of some sort of organization that manages the SWIP for the town. So that can either be a waste district. In Randolph's case, you are sort of the lead town in the Mountain Alliance, which includes Braintree, Brookfield, Roxbury, and Northfield. And Mountain Alliance contracts with Casella to manage the submission of the SWIP and ensure that it is executed each year. So this new SWIP is for the new 5-year term beginning in January. So what's included in a SWIP? We'll do disposal and diversion reporting for all of the member towns annually. This notable change on that sort of portion of the SWIP is that this will now occur in April rather than June. So we're just going to be getting the data back to the Agency of Natural Resources a little bit more quickly. Outreach, I would say this is sort of the heaviest lift of the SWIP and why towns tend to either contract or be part of a district. We're required to do digital print. We manage a website, mountainalliance.com. We do in-person business outreach and school outreach. So I don't know if anyone in the room is a business owner, you may have had me knocking on your door in the last few months. But we just do outreach on sort of all of the waste bans, recycling rules. New for 2026 is we'll be doing outreach on the Vermont single-use product law, which asks businesses to consider alternatives to styrofoam containers and plastic bags, things like that. And then lastly, collection infrastructure. We are required to have variable rate pricing and household hazardous waste events in the town. So we'll continue to do those, which we should have the dates for those posted on the website early 2026. New for this year, I think this is really the most notable change in the SWIP this go round is that we're going to work with the town of Randolph and the other member towns to come up with a disaster debris plan. So this was something that was sort of lacking in the two flood events we've had the past few years, where, you know, if the Randolph transfer station goes down, if another local transfer station goes down, where do we take the flood material? How do we manage that? How do we, you know, keep public health at the forefront of that? So we'll be working to create a plan for if that happens again. And that's going to happen in the first year of the SWIP term. So yeah, this is technically our second public meeting on the SWIP. The first was Tuesday, the 9th. So yeah, I guess I'll open it up if there's any questions from the board, any questions about the SWIP. And if not, we can vote to adopt the SWIP tonight. If you'd like to. So that's it for me.
We do this every 5 years is roughly the time. I don't know, I couldn't remember if she covered that or not, so.
Yes, so we allowed Northfield to join. And then that moved, one of our hazardous collection days to them.
Mhm.
We used to have 2.
Yep, we're spring, we host the spring, they host the fall.
And that was pretty much the only change, other than they paid to get in or they offset something. And we don't have any more towns that want to join us.
Not that I've reached out to express interest now, but
It's cheaper for us
yeah.
every time we find one, that's all.
But any of the residents of the member towns can use either of those household hazardous waste days. You know, they're not generally open, but they are open to the residents of the member towns.
Yeah.
Is the Northfield one, well, advertised in the same way that the Randolph one is for our members?
It's the same flyer, yeah. It's
Okay.
posted in a few different spots. It usually goes in the annual report as well. Sort of a cutout if you really want to get your scissors out and put it on your fridge, you can do that.
Probably not that, but it might be a good way to kind of throw that in our new website too, and kind of make sure that's included in our website or on our calendar. Sure. So,
Yeah, I remember, you know, when we looked at all that, it was a good thing. So I was just curious if there was another town out there, because we saved them a lot of money when they joined too.
This is my first SWIP, so very excited.
This is your first one.
My first one.
That would be one of the most fun acronyms you'll deal with, so that's always exciting.
You still got a good sense of humor. You work with it every day, so it can't be that bad.
The debris plan's a good element to add to. We didn't have that pressure in the July of 23 storms because our damage was of a different sort of variety in terms of the building and construction debris. We had plenty of, you know, vegetative and woody material, and we were able to put that at the stump dump and be able to count it for FEMA purposes and then have to get rid of it. But towns that didn't have that plan, that had more of the sort of the building construction related debris, that was a really hard element to try to figure out on the fly. So to the extent we can plan for it and be ready, that's ideal.
That's great. Since this is my first SWIP, can you explain the stump dump details to me? Like, so like, what happens to all that? Is that like, who does what?
Most of it just decomposes on site.
Okay.
Sometimes we have had to come in and bring some in to chip materials.
Okay.
To either leave them on site or take them away.
So it's just kind of a safe dumping ground for natural.
The yard
material.
waste depot is the easiest way to think about it. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's be going in there, and smaller trees and those things. You're not, bringing.
But in the case of the flood, we had
Treated wood. Yeah, we were bringing where we had to clear, because there was a lot of tree and other blockage and damage, and just stuff we had to clear out and figure out where to put it in some cases.
Where did we put it?
Stumped up.
Okay. Thank you.
Some of that wasn't just it had soaked, so it had gone through the river and had written.
It got wet in the wood.
And yeah.
And it helped us comply with, it's where it gets into all the different wonkeries, the regulations that helped us comply with FEMA, basically having that facility was a real benefit, and to be able to put everything in a pile, we could go and
measure it.
Basically estimate what was in there based on the size of the pile.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds great. I would motion.
Everybody's burning with a question or wants more information on the SWIP.
Well, I will motion to approve.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's all yours.
Thanks, Abby.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, Trevor, I'll just need your signature on the cover page, and then if you want to send it back to me, we can send it off to A&R tomorrow and hopefully get you guys approved.
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for everybody.
Thank you.
Consider economic development committee creation resumption. That's a mouthful. Who's got that one?
I can talk to that a little bit. I think Mark is also on, correct?
Yep.
I was interested in having this conversation, here at the select board meeting. With RACDC closing up shop permanently, there seems to be answers to what to do with the housing side of things, but not the downtown designation in the downtown program. And so I think it's kind of important to like, just be really clear, like, I have questions about like what is required, what's the statutes, like how that money would flow. Because we right now have $20,000 that's supposed to go to RACDC every year to support it, and then there's the $25,000 from the state, and just kind of it's a big problem, I guess. And I think it might be interesting to think about creating a new community based on like how that has to flow, or my understanding of how it has to flow, at least that it has to be a municipality that approves. So I don't know, I'll maybe give it over to you about like what is like what's the process, or what do we have to do, or what is.
Right, so the downtown organization ties to the downtown designation that we have, so that has to flow through the municipality. We're the only ones who can seek that status, acquire that status, maintain it. Part of that process there were a couple of different ways to operate that enterprise, but with some of the recent changes, we were trying to consolidate the number of programs and designations. They clarified that you do need a downtown organization of some kind of separate entity as part of that designation process. Now, what that entity does is really variable. Some places have them and they focus on marketing events. Others have them and they might tie into other initiatives. And so there's no shortage of different examples as to what they do in practice. And why we're in the mix is we're the only ones that can essentially receive or apply for the Downtown Vibrancy Fund money. We have to sign off on that every year in the plan, and you did that a couple of months ago, I think it was. Any of the grants that are passed through, we're the entity that they pass through. So we certainly have a pretty heavy role in all the stuff, not to mention there are the overlap with everything from the infrastructure to traffic patterns. So all of these, we were talking earlier tonight about bike ped plans, and that's very much in our wheelhouse as well.
So that's a downtown designation.
It's not a downtown designation thing, but I think it does play into, if we ever had a downtown master plan, probably have some streetscaping elements, and done some projects over the years, whether it be stormwater / streetscaping like the Anna Merchants Row or the street tree grant that is currently active. So there are those pieces too that again have to flow through us. So we met with Gary Holloway, who runs the program for the state. We tried to get a sense of what was possible and how it all applies. And downtown designations open up some tax credits, especially tied to historic preservation, but there are a few different ones. And then we have had a revolving loan fund has been operated through a downtown group. This is old leftover federal CDBG funds, I think, from after the fire that got converted into this program and then are lent out. And so those will need a new home. Those don't have to be with a downtown entity. So we'll have to figure out what's the right way to set those up so that they can remain in circulation to support businesses. So there's a couple of different pieces that fit together, but not all of them fit under that designation umbrella, but we've tied them all together at different points in the past.
Because RACDC was kind of an over-encompassing, and then this was kind of a small part of what they were doing.
Yeah, they're a bit of an odd duck compared to the other entities that they had the housing component that was such a large portion of their overall effort. I can't think of another one that has that pairing of downtown organization and housing focus. and to stay a little more siloed, at least in an activity way.
So for these funds that are both the town committed funds and the state grant, we have to have a whole separate entity to do them, or we can just have a committee that's made up of a variety of folks that direct how the money's spent.
So I'm going back and looking at my notes, we have to have, with some of the changes as they try to kind of collapse the number of programs, make them more effective and a little more efficient, that you have to have an entity if you want to have the downtown designation. If it came through, we looked at the benefits, and for whatever reason we said there aren't enough benefits for this, or we prefer some other mechanism, then obviously you've got freedom to set it up how you want. But to have the designation, we have to have some kind of entity. They don't prescribe what that entity is or even what it does, just that it has to exist. So they gave us the name of some other examples to look at. I remember Waterbury came up, St. Johnsbury, Springfield on the Move, because it ties into a regional development corporation. There's a group in St. Albans City, at least. I don't know if it does the town as well. But,
Do we track what the benefit is to the town for this downtown designation?
we haven't historically.
We haven't seen a lot of like the tax credits or all that come through. I've heard more that it's pretty rigorous.
And the tax credits, I have to defer. I don't know historically who sought them and how that's something we need to get from the folks who's operated that.
It would be interesting if we could kind of get our head around like the whole, like, is it worth the amount of money the town puts into this and whatnot, is that worth the designation?
I think one of the ideas about how to figure out what's next ties into making that kind of determination, weighing out what's the benefit. And then also what's the right entity for it. And there's nothing that says you couldn't keep the designation, build a really small footprint kind of entity. You do marketing and events or whatever it is, but then build it in a way where you could kind of expand it if it made sense to have it do something else as we change, evolve, adapt, whatever it might be. And so it also would be build something with an eye toward a little bit of flexibility.
There has to be an entity that's able to handle like large sums of money and grants and that sort of stuff, correct? Or because like we were talking about.
Depends on the scope. If it's a marketing and events thing, it may be a much smaller footprint. There might be different ways to set up financial controls. The grants that pass through us, there is the capability for us through sub-grant agreements, through separate sub-grant agreements, like the one we did with NEP, separate projects, similar idea. And then the money flows, and there are multiple checks on those kinds of grant funds where you have to apply for reimbursement. The sub-grantee does, and the state looks at it, and we have to essentially say, okay, at some point in that process. And so we can kind of see what the money's spent on based on the request. So with those types of grants, we at least have a window. And as the grantee, we do have certain abilities that we've never exercised to say, whoa, because we haven't been in that spot, thankfully.
So it's kind of an organization that it's its own entity, but it relies on and works with the town heavily.
Well, if you had a new entity, you have a new board. Well, and then what that board is shaped like is something that is open for discussion. Sometimes they have liaisons that might be staff or elected people, whatever it might be. Sometimes they're wholly independent. And so that have to be determined what's the right shape. I like the idea of we have so many different and disparate opinions and efforts across categories right now. It would be nice to have everybody at a table in a room figuring out how to row in the same direction.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of confusion and a lot of like good intentions, but kind of employing in different directions. I think it would be helpful to kind of have a good conversation about what is needed, like what's desired, and what everyone wants to see happen. And yeah, I feel like it's very chaotic out there right now.
Because even the revolving loan fund has a separate element. Once the funds go through that process, you lose some of the federal restrictions on usage. Doesn't mean you can just lend them out like crazy, but maybe you can do, rather than new business support, you can also do existing business support. There might be different ways to create different programmatic elements, but we don't know that. We try to create an elephant, but I don't know how to do that with money. But
yeah, I think the revolving loan fund, I mean, in my experience, which obviously, in my own scope, I feel like I know more people have used the revolving loan fund than the downtown tax credits. But I might be wrong on that, but that's just my experience.
There are different entities and partners that can handle that, so they don't have to be the same thing, and we're exploring those options too to see. What might the best one for that be?
Handle the long fund.
Mm,
Somebody that have.
yeah.
But we do get, if the project is within the boundaries, we get extra points on certain types of grant applications too. I haven't ever seen those points swing somebody to get it or not get it in the committees I've sat on, but it is a piece in statute in certain places that the downtown designations or the village designation gets. I don't think it says the points or whatever, right? It just says something about in the criteria.
Because I think the downtowns don't support it, is that what their opinion is, or?
I don't know what that.
Actually, I think it might tie into larger land use goals of trying to concentrate a development, protected. Working in concert, conserves spaces around. So an extra incentive to.
I mean, on that. The tax credits aren't available if you do not have a downtown designation. Is that true?
I wouldn't believe so, but that'd be an area to make sure we fully
Or
understood.
there's not like an alternative, like if you live in this, well, it'd be a business, so if you are in this downtown destination, it's easier to do this, but if you don't, maybe there's some other way to access that type of money, or?
They tend to stitch it all together, but I don't know if there's an alternative.
I think it is the purpose of one of the purposes of the downtown nations.
The designations do tie into the larger land use mapping exercise too. I remember that being covered a couple times. I couldn't get into detail as to how, but in terms of what the benefit is, I don't think there's any drawback if you don't have one, you could still be. But it might tie into whether you're tier 1A, tier 1B. And Act 250 applies or doesn't apply based on where you land. You just have your local regulations, which would streamline the permitting process theoretically.
Would Act 250 be ever triggered in our designate downtown area, even if it doesn't have a designation?
Could be currently with the projects. I don't know what the right project elements would be.
There's not enough space to do a project that large, I would say. I'm not overly familiar with that, but it seems like it wouldn't be triggered in our Randolph downtown.
I think it also depends on what it is, like what's the waste product and amount and, right? Like, I know her director is like, they're processing milk solids into the wastewater.
That's that triggered at 250. Okay. Okay, so that could potential, okay. That makes sense, thank you.
So I think the
I don't
test,
know how it relates to designated downtown or not. I don't know if it.
I don't know.
We just passed the bill that is some housing.
Right, but
Doesn't
what the
require-
legislature did with Act 181 was to loosen some of the Act 250 oversight for housing in developed areas, including downtowns. I don't think, but I could be wrong. I don't think it's connected to the downtown designation as much as it's connected to areas with water and sewer. So, but it gets complicated pretty fast. I'm wondering if it would make sense for us to have someone from the downtown program to come in and give us an oversight who can more easily answer a lot of these questions.
It depends on how you want to structure that conversation. We can always schedule it for here, but there's an idea maybe to spin out a little group, pull some stakeholders together with the town and spend a couple of months doing exactly that, producing some kind of presumably a document that says, here's what we found, here are recommendations, here are some options. Mark's on because he's thought about that idea a little bit, had some conversations, but so we can do both, we can do one, we can do the other. It's kind of, there isn't any prescribed way to move from where we're at to what's next.
I think it's a two-phase piece, right? So I think that's a good thing. And we probably ought to look at, maybe Stephanie look to be the select board rep on that one. Sounds like she's pretty interested.
Yeah, she's disappointed.
He goes, yes.
But I think we also lost a lot when the recommendation came in to get rid of the economic development committee that the town had. Because I think we have lost our focus on some of these bigger projects that we were working on. And some of the interaction with all the businesses in town, not just kind of a slice of them. So I think there's I thought this was coming up to say, we need to put this committee back in play to help us with feeding interest into the town and helping, some of these businesses that want to do expansion or want to come and are looking to locate need a more blended group, not just one person going out to talk with them. And that's kind of some of what that committee was working on also. So I was expecting this to be more of a, should we develop that committee again and try again and see if we can get some better direction on.
Wasn't one of the issues that there were like 2 or 3 economic committees in the town, and
now we have none.
Right.
And nobody's talking to each other, and
yeah, so there really is none anymore, like
Well, we had
no one else is.
one that was an official town committee
Yeah.
that the select board would make appointments to. And if my memory is right, maybe you can help me, Trini, that committee disbanded because they themselves requested it. They were feeling like they weren't giving us the town enough value to justify having that committee. But that was then, and maybe it's time to look at that again.
Can I share a little light on that?
I'd be happy to hear.
Due to the fact that I was probably the one who put this whole thing together to start with.
Please.
So first off, Stephanie, I think if you have Trevor's dig back into the archives, you'll find out Julie presented a report one time when we were challenging her, when I was sitting in your seat, okay? And she told us just what those values of those tax credits were. So that is somewhere on record here in a report that she provided.
Can you think of what year? Sorry.
Oh, I'm guessing 16,
Month?
17, 18, somewhere's in there.
So I should thank you.
Okay, and I can't remember tell you what month, but.
That's okay. I'll look for it. Thank you.
So I think you'll find that she provided a report with that, because at the time, there was a lot of challenging on what we were getting for our $20,000. Okay? And that was a substantial value. Okay, so that would give you a little history on what those tax credits were. I can't tell you the mechanism for how they come about, but I do think that you have to have a separate organization. That I remember it had to be a separate organization that could not be affiliated with the town. Okay, so that's what I know about that. That may have changed. You got Larry right there, he can dig into that one for you. Okay, that's a legislative thing, I'm sure. As far as the Economic Development Committee goes, okay, what had happened was that process started when Adelpha was here. And Adelpha at the time, there was a group of us meeting, and we were kind of an ad hoc group doing our little thing, and I had conversations with Adelpha, and we determined after having the R3 process that it would be beneficial to have an Economic Development Committee. That would work with a full-time Economic Development Director. So that process got fumbled around, putzed around for a couple, 3 years, and then R3 happened. And in the light of what you talked about having 2 or 3 economic development committees, well, that did kind of occur because there was a group that came out of R3, and then there was the official town group, and they tried to blend those, and then COVID came, and then it lost its focus. So at that particular time, I think after COVID kind of wrapped up, the group wasn't feeling that they were being effective anymore because it was too fragmented. And so that's why I think they asked to have the board disband them. There's your history lesson.
There was also an RACDC Downtown Economic Committee, which I sat on.
There was
as well. Yeah.
With all of them.
And that's how
with everybody to talk.
meeting.
And then you have the chamber as the outlier out here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had essentially 4 different groups trying to accomplish something.
And they didn't talk to each other.
And they weren't talking. And I think if you're gonna do this, I'd be happy to share with you what the original formula was, and I really think that if you went back to that original formula, you could probably make some difference here, because it shouldn't be just about what happens in the downtown. This needs to be things like, you need to be looking at how you're gonna grow grand list value. Because if you can't grow grand list value here, okay, your situation with taxes is only gonna get worse and worse and worse. I wrote a paper on that in 2014
14 or 15 to explain that, and I can tell you right now, we're exactly where I thought we would be. And then the state actually helped us along a little bit more because now we have to pay more for education. So anyways.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I never thought about that part of it. I was just thinking about trying to make sure, you know, we do have businesses all over the place. We have, you know, my real estate agent and I had a good conversation about, she's kind of a business owner in Randolph, but she doesn't have a physical location here, technically, you know, and like, there's a bunch of people like that that are doing lots of business things and doing lots of great things. And how can we find a way to just have feedback and communication and be able to move forward all together for all of us just to do better. Yeah.
Well, you need to bring those entities together, you know, there's a gal meeting at Wit and Grit, okay, on whatever Tuesday or something, I don't know what the cultivator group.
Yeah.
You got a lot of things floating around here, and everybody's got the same goal, but nobody's on the same page.
Yeah, the
Okay.
cultivator stuff might be a little bit different than what I'm thinking, because I've attended those. It's a lot, it's great. It's a lot of like, I have an idea and I'm thinking about making a business, which is great.
But at some point, they're gonna need support from the community. They may need
Sure,
your revolving loan
exactly.
fund. And I think, you know, you've got to figure out how to address that, because a revolving loan fund is a valuable asset. And I'm not sure what's in it now, but I know there was a substantial amount of cash in it. That could be beneficial to some of these businesses that want to start up, or businesses that need to expand.
Yeah, and making it more accessible. It was kind of, it was a challenging process at times previously. And so it'd be nice to be able to kind of get something a little more streamlined. I know we talked possibly about reaching out to community capital, which I worked with for a business loan. I don't know, like I have my experience. It doesn't mean that's like the best idea either, or the best way to go. So that's why I think it'd be great to open up the conversation, even if this starts off as similar to the police service committee, of just an exploration of what is needed and how it should be structured. I think it'd be great to be able to get an area, like a space for everyone to come to have the conversations all together. Instead of people just feeling segmented and not knowing where to go and who to talk to, and it's frustrating, and we want to take that frustration away.
To get started.
I'm sorry?
You need to develop a scope of work that this committee is gonna be able to do to get started.
Yeah.
And who you're gonna put on it.
Yeah, I guess this part of what I wanted to do today was just like, is it a good idea to get started on it? Or is the timing right?
It's two different pieces, but they gotta go in sync.
Sure, exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
you need to develop a charge for the committee, which is kind of what Perry was saying, like, let's go.
Yeah.
And sort of, what do you want for folks on it? But I think the other one is getting our heads around the downtown program and
Right.
and how that should flow and what are the requirements, because that wouldn't go through a committee.
Yeah, I think getting feedback from our business community, because part of it is, there's always like, we could spend a lot of money or partner with somebody and throw money at them or whatever to get the downtown designation. And how much money is that gonna take? How much effort is that gonna take? And what is the actual benefit to that? So if we only have one business every 10 years applying for the tax credits and it amounts to $30,000 of benefit to them, is it worth spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, or whatever that number is, to maintain the downtown designation? And I'm just throwing numbers out there. I'm just saying, like, so what is the benefit? Is it worth it, or can we find a different way to kind of do that? So I guess for me, I'd like to hear from the businesses on what could be useful to them, I guess, in that area. And then also, I mean, we have the power to decide what the downtown designation is in the area. Like, for example, Larry Davignon was just saying he isn't in it, the funeral home. And it's like 1-2 blocks off from the, you know, so like, what are the boundaries if we are going to do that to be more inclusive, if we could be, if it made sense, if that would be beneficial to those other businesses as well? I think it's a big question, and I would like to get a lot of feedback from people.
It's almost like them defining what the benefits are they want. And is
Exactly.
the downtown program the best?
Yeah.
To do that.
The use of energy and money from the town, or do we redirect that in some other way? And I think sometimes it's hard, like people try to do things that are helpful, but they don't ask you what's helpful. And so they do stuff like, well, that's cute, like, I need money for marketing. Is there any way we could like help me with marketing? You know, like, that's what I And other businesses I think have experienced that too, where there's like these nice little gestures but there's a lot of money going towards it, but it's maybe not really being beneficial to the businesses.
Well, I think you brought it up a few months ago too about. It's nice that people want to do things for new businesses to come in, but what about preserving the ones that we have now?
Correct.
And how do you? I think there's also, I think, missing like a strategy. Like, what's our strategy to get people to come to Randolph? You know, like, what is there? What are we? How are we pushing that? How are we?
I have ideas.
Well, I was just gonna add, because I sat on the Economic Development Committee, and it was really COVID that kind of dispersed it, and we didn't have Mark's role at that time. Like, we wanted it, and we were searching for it, but it wasn't here yet, so it was being led by townspeople. We created a fabulous magazine that had like everything you just mentioned, Trini, like the list of like, what can you come into town and find? And I would highlight different businesses, like even outside of right downtown. It had the list of restaurants, like that go-to place for people either wanting to move here or coming to visit here, that they can, that resource. And there's also an online portion of that as well. And I don't know what we have for that at this point, but that also came with a lot of work. And we were really lucky at the time. I think we had Val Schoolcraft, who was like spearing that charge and could design a magazine, because like that was not my neck of the woods. And I think we were just missing someone to lead that group at the time, but it was really nice because it brought a lot of organizations and people to the table to talk about everything that we really do have, because a lot of people just don't know like all the different things that are here and can be utilized or enjoyed. So, but and I also would add, I think it's important for the business people to be heard, but also the people who would be coming to consume or partake in those businesses. Like, what do the people want to come do? So I think that should be considered as well.
Just not to hammer this too bad, but I got invited to one of the meetings that Perry was talking about at John's office one day. Didn't really know what I was walking into. But it was a really good group of the business community. And it was an environment where they could talk about a challenge they had, and other businesses would help them. But it was also a group that would hear somebody wanted to do something, whether they were expanding or coming in or wanted to move to Randolph or whatever. And they were actually they put together folks to go talk to them, so that you had a banker and you had a person who had done something like that, or who had just developed, or, some, whatever, to try to go. It was a way to put like a resource wrap around. To go talk to them and have that conversation. And it was actually a really cool.
It really works if you offer pizza and beer. Everybody will come.
It wasn't there.
But that's what I did in my office, because Barry stopped in my office. I forget what year it was, and said, "We got to do something." And I said, I'll just pay for the pizza and beer, and we'll invite everybody, and anybody from town that wants to come.
It had been going a while when you guys, it was pretty well worked out. The process was good. It was rolling.
So in the process, and part of that process is we knew right from the get-go, before we even did the R3 thing, that the town needed to have a full-time economic development director. And, the challenge was, how are you gonna fund that? And there was a number of us business people that were willing to fund a portion of that. And so that was key. And then when the R3 process came through, and we had these people coming from these other communities to tell us that they were the economic development director for those communities, it made a lot of sense. And so, I do think that was the right model. So, you need to if you get back there, like I said, you need to figure out what the scope of work is gonna be, because it's not all just bringing people in here and bringing tourists in here and marketing. You've got to figure out this, how you're gonna grow that grand list.
But don't you think that some of when that group was the most effective was the folks that were being put together and the environment they were talking to these people in? Like, it was a very, like, we're here to help you.
Yeah.
What are you trying to do? Sort of, what are the resources you need? Like, how can we?
It was like mentorship.
Help you find the path.
One person can't hear what's going on within the community. That's why if it was made up of business leaders, that was the goal, was to put a lot of people who were involved in the business side of this, because they were hearing what was going on, so they could bring this to the meeting and say, hey, look, so-and-so's thinking about expanding, or they heard somebody else wants to move here and open up their business, or because this business relies on this business. So there were some of those things were starting to happen, and, you know, this it fell apart. You know, like Bethany said, you know, COVID pretty much killed that too. So.
So you gotta start back up.
Yeah, I don't have my office. It's already. I'm selling it.
Sounds like beer and pizza is the critical. Do it.
But it had different folks at it each time, was my understanding.
No, we had,
Like,
there was a core
if you
group,
could make
and
it,
you know,
you made it.
people would show up because they were curious.
Yeah. and then-
Or they had a, there was some people being recruited, like, hey, we gotta
Right, yeah,
ask, they really.
right. And it wasn't the same people every time.
And the process got a little challenging, because like I said, Stephanie's right, you know, there's 4 different entities and they got fragmented.
Working against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think if you're gonna do that, once that group puts together, you ought to hold another R3 meeting. That was pretty valuable.
That's kind of what happened, if I read the notes correctly, at the White River Craft Center. Because they had
Yeah,
CDs
right,
and
yeah.
they put things they wanted to see, and they were actually pretty similar to what we had come out of the R3 process.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Heather?
Hey, this is Heather Bowman, and I have somebody on the phone that wanted to have an opportunity to speak to the select board. I've got them on speakerphone. What would be the best way to do this?
Have them call into the meeting so it gets picked up on the recording.
Here. Hi, Brent. So this is Kate Brent Center. Really sorry I'm not at the meeting. Can everyone hear me?
Heather, that's not working. They need to call in. So they can,
There's a phone number you can call into the Zoom thing.
it's right on the agenda. It's in all the publications. So,
Do you have access to the phone to
Zoom? I think it's both that we need.
Yeah, call into the Zoom.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Okay, I'm on it. 2 minutes. Thank you.
So I guess that's a yes. We should probably
Yes.
look at creating this committee.
So I think, it's 2 committees.
Okay.
Right? One to look at the downtown. Right, and look at what all that is, and then one to write a charge and create the new committee.
So we're kind of doing like, just kind of almost like a public hearing committee sort of a thing. So like kind of like the police service committee to kind of decide to designate downtown, and then also do the economic development committee that would be permanent for
On
other
the
economic.
designated, you were already working on kind of that, right? Sort of what are the groups that need to come together to figure out what's needed and how to work it?
Right, there is a framework that Mark's been working on.
Okay.
If what you want, because we're also still have quite a bit of ground to cover, we can come back on the 8th with 2 sets of plans.
Okay.
One that lays out, here's how the stakeholder group downtown piece would move from here to an endpoint and an end product. And then also how the Economic Development Committee resurrection happens, and it gives us some time to pull some of the original scopes, find the original recipe, figure out changes, and then think a little bit about grand list strategy, put some of those things into a charge. And then you can figure out which ones maybe the best is sort of an informal charge, versus if you want to create a formal committee. We can run each like a public meeting, but obviously if it's not a formal group, it's a collective that a staff member puts together, that's a different animal. So it's also figuring out what kind of entity do you want a little bit there, and we can give you those options if you want for the 8th. You haven't seen it, but
She's on there.
I'm on, I just don't know how to raise my hand. Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so hi. I'm sorry I can't be with you all. I am in Georgia celebrating my new nephew, but this is Kate Brandstetter and I own Black Meadow. I have some things to say. We signed our lease the week before COVID. We moved 2 years later. We are a thriving and successful business in this town. We rely heavily on tourism, and we rely heavily on making connections with our queer and LGBTQ community. The only time that our business has ever felt supported or involved was when Erica from RACBC came to our business and invited us to participate in a series of business mixers. The business mixers have been going on. They are wonderful. Invitations go out. It's fantastic. I have made connections with some businesses in town that are wonderful. And we meet and we discuss, and it's great. The only time has ever happened was because of Erica. That is my comment. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll this up in.
Yeah, and real quick, I just wanted to say that it looks like
Can you just
Erica.
identify yourself?
Oh, sorry, I'm Sunny Irons. It looks like Erica has a meeting about downtown Randolph's future on the 18th.
Yep.
So it seems relevant.
Yeah.
From 1 to 2.
Where is that?
At Chandler, it was on Front Porch Forum today.
It's in the Esther Mushroom.
Yeah.
Not sure that's gonna get us to a committee definition and all that, but it is a piece of the puzzle. The mixers are a piece of the puzzle, the different activities are a piece of the puzzle. It's just we need something that's gonna pull all those pieces together, and John's just volunteered to do it.
Where does Mark stand in all this? Is our economic?
He's just
development-
waving.
Yeah.
You see him on the screen, he's just waving.
I want to hear from him.
Go ahead, Mark. I want to unmute.
There you go.
We still can't hear you, Mark. Lips are moving.
Can't hit.
No, I think there's an issue, something's going on with the sound, I think. On your end, you look like you're unmuted and. Either that or this is performance art, in which case. We'll play it.
Mark, maybe you can call in.
It just keeps up.
Yeah. No sound, I don't think. Oh, you're muted again.
Careful not to kick them out. They don't want you back in. Remember you did that to me?
I did that, so I hovered over it, went away real fast.
I had to find a new device and log back in.
Mark, if you can hear us, you have to unmute.
He's rebooting.
It's still on there.
Could I say something in the meantime while he's trying to get that going? This is Eva Loomis again. Could we get back into the practice of people announcing themselves? Like, sorry, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
I should have known who you were.
No, that's okay.
I've lived here long enough. I should know. And
Sorry, I'm Bethany, sorry.
Bethany Stiller. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I know I should know a lot of people and I don't. So thank you.
Yeah, Mark. I'm just trying to call him.
So totally understand you want to hear from him, but we really have a long agenda still to go. And I think what the gist of this is in January, we'll try to come back with sort of the outline of what a committee might do.
Yeah.
And what the approach to the downtown designation and that whole piece would be.
And I'll talk to Mark.
And Mark might click on in the meantime and we'll go back to him. Does that work?
Sure.
So we can just see what else we have. Oh, we're not coming back to you real soon because we're about ready to kick off the events. Ordinance draft.
You gotta get Mark back on real quick if you want.
Yep, bring him in.
Yeah. Go.
Hello?
That work for you, Mark? Now your phone's muted.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try not to remove you. I can ask to unmute, I don't think I can unmute.
I can just talk to him separately.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna move,
move it.
keep going. All right. So last month, we had the planning commission chair come in and walk the board through their draft ordinance for events that was presented to us.
It is on Zoom as well.
Yeah.
And so, I think today was to go out and talk to the public, get some opinions on it, get some feedback, what people liked, what people didn't like. You wanna talk about it at all, Larry, the planning commission member?
I no longer remember.
But you were on
But
this,
I did help with this, yes. Our ordinance had not been revised for a very long time. This is a brand new version. The planning commission spent quite a bit of time researching what other towns have done and used the information that they found to create this document. It was a really great set of meetings where lots of really good ideas were discussed, and it was a consensus document from the planning commission. And I think, you know, at our last meeting, I think Matt walked us through the details of it, so I don't think I'm prepared to go into that kind of detail. But I think it does a lot of what we need here in our town, and I'd love to hear what other people have as comments on, like you said, things that are good about it, things that are not, and what we ought to be doing as we move forward.
anything from the board before we open it up?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, Barry.
Okay, so Barry Armstrong. So having a lot of experience in the event business for the last 37 years, I'm pretty disturbed about what I've read here. Okay. And I'm very concerned about what you're limiting people on private property to. Because just in about 10 minutes of sitting down and thinking about this and looking at your ordinance, what you're proposing, it's gonna affect a lot of people and a lot of events. And you guys are gonna spend a lot of time, more so than you're spending on the liquor control board. Okay? So for example, I think the Gifford concert series would be partly affected. I think the Last Mile Ride is definitely affected. I think the farmer's market could be affected. I think that unused golf tournaments could be affected. Lake Champlain has a shelter that they rent out, which they probably get more than 100 participants at. Chet has a Jet Fest up in Randolph Center. Grant Camp has a shelter that sometimes gets more than 100 people. And then let's see, we have some churches have some craft bazaars in the summertime. I know that one of them has had a church revival in the past. It's gathered more than 100. And then you get some private things like Rob's Dimmick's Pig Roast, and the Siloways have their Cow Out Day. And then we have Mid-State Riding Club, who holds horse events through the summer. And that's when it came up in 10 minutes. Okay. I think you need to kick this back to the planning commission. I think you need to have a number of us people go and have a conversation with them. Be happy to do it. So you're going to affect a lot of people here. And then what do you do when somebody, I know you can probably make an exception for this easily. Somebody dies and they want to have a celebration of life 2 weeks later. Now you got a 45-day timeline. How are you going to plan that? So I just don't think there's a lot of common sense that went into this thing. And I agree, you need to update it because it was done in 81, but I'm not quite sure this is the extreme you need to go to because I think what we've been doing has been working. I have personally filed for 4 or 5 of those myself. So I'm not sure what the big deal is. I know where this came from because we dealt with this when I was on the board. And it's all about the Williamses and the tractor pulls. That's the bottom line. That's what's going on. So let's figure out how we can talk about this in a little bit more sensible so that we're not affecting everybody. I believe I might be fortunate enough that those of us who own the hotel don't necessarily have to go through this process because part of our zoning permit and our Act 250 permit, we're allowed to have events there. I could be wrong about that because I'm trying to figure that out. I need to take it to an attorney and figure out whether I'm having to get a hold of and get a permit every time I do an event.
Yeah.
It said in there something about if
Yeah,
it's
it
part of
did, so I
your.
just wanna make sure I'm clear about that.
Yeah, I'd like to just ask Perry a question. So it sounds like most of your concern is around the number.
I think the
of
number's too
participants.
low, I think the number's too low. And I think private property is a huge concern of mine.
Yeah, because we did, at our last select board meeting, when we talked about this, we did talk about changing that number. That it was flagged as being too low. And so I'm just trying to hone in on really what the essence of your concern is, because that's a pretty easy fix. You know, if that's not the right number, because that was something that the planning commission struggled with, was because it seems like, well, we just got to pick a number. How do we do that? So having more input, what your input is great, because what you're talking about here makes a lot of sense. So the fact that that number needs to get higher seems pretty clear, at least to me. But I just wanted to know if there's other things in the document that are specific that we can be like, okay, this is something that, you know, is going to be problematic that we also ought to change. Got the
I think you need
number.
to work on some of your exemptions, okay, because I see public schools, but then I don't see anything that covers VTC's graduation. Okay, so that needs a permit now, because that's not a public school, okay, state owns it. So maybe there's a gray area there, I don't know. Okay, let's say Bernie wants to hold an event in the Judge Gym, okay, now you guys, has got to have a permit for that? That's happened numerous times in the past. Okay, I mean, I rent stages to VTC for events that are going on in the gym up there that I think would require a permit now. So, yeah, and I don't know, you know, and I think about where I've been over the last 37 years doing events. And I can only think of two places where this comes up, Stowe and Manchester. And I don't want to be Stowe and I don't want to be like Manchester. We're not that kind of community. So I think I would be happy to come to planning commission meetings and sit in with you guys. And I think a lot of other members of the community would be happy to do that too, to tweak this a little bit. I'm not disagreeing that we need a new policy. I just don't know how far it needs to go.
Yeah.
Okay, 500 was the number on the old policy. I have that here. And I think that number is still reasonable. But we can kick that around from there.
Thank you.
This is Matt Morosky, the chair of the planning commission. Can I comment?
Yeah, go ahead. On Harry's comment?
In general, but yeah, largely on Perry's comments, which I really appreciate. Perry, we would welcome you at a planning commission meeting to get your input. You listed a lot of things that I would not want to require a permit either, to be clear. And the intent was never to bring in almost any of those activities underneath this application. The exemption that allowed for ongoing events that were customary and usual uses of a business or something like VTC. We never intended for that to require a permit. We still don't. But something like the last mile ride of the activities you listed, that is something that would need a permit because of its impact on municipal services, disruption of traffic, and that sort of thing. Something like Lake Champlain using their gazebo, again, that's a customary, it's a usual use of an ongoing business that's an official business in town. We never intended to capture that. If that's not clear, then we need to make some revisions to make sure that is clear. And in terms of the number, the threshold for people, that's certainly something that we could debate. That's where the group as a whole, the planning commission came down, but that's certainly adjustable. And the final thing is you are absolutely right. The impetus, the most recent impetus to write this ordinance was the tractor pull. We don't need to shy away from that. The issue there is, and this is not really, well, there's only one tractor pull. We do have ongoing and increasingly instances in town where there are activities or use of land or events which have ongoing negative implications for neighbors. And the consensus of and I think the reason the select board sent the planning commission this ordinance to look at is because folks were uncomfortable with the offsite and ongoing offsite impacts of that event. And the hope here with this ordinance is, while lots of stuff can still continue, the hope is that we can put some limits on what happens on some private land that has an ongoing negative impact on neighbors. And Perry, I look forward to talking to you about it.
More than happy to. Actually, I'd like to direct it, I was gonna make a comment, but I'd like to direct it to Matt.
Identify your.
Oh, Tom Hardy. It's very clear, this was aimed at the tractor. And you cannot solve neighborhood disputes through ordinance. So my question would be, what events other than that did you see that needed more structure? I know, like Perry said, we had an old event list, and I agree that it needed updating. But why do we need one from Chittenden County, written by lawyers, that you took off the Winooski website, instead of one that's Randolph size? And the second part of that is, what other things in town did you see that needed regulating?
Yeah, good questions, Tom. Thanks. I did not know Winooski had an ordinance, so thanks for pointing me to that. Maybe I'll take a look at it.
It's identical to the one you published.
What's that?
It reads word for word for the one you published.
I did not know Winooski had an ordinance. We looked at a number of
You can
different
say that,
municipalities.
that's a model ordinance you pulled off the web.
The ordinance for the town of Essex was really influential. It was organized well. So a lot of the organization came from the town of Essex. But I wanted to answer the other part of your question about what other events do we think needed permits. And they're mostly ones that are already getting permits. I've over the years applied for 2 permits, and it was as the person applying for the permits, it was a kind of ill-defined process. It was not very friendly to the applicant, me. And now, if I were to go apply for those event permits, a permit for those events again, it's really straightforward. It's really quite simple. It's very clear what I need to do. It's clear whether I'm a minor or a major. It makes life a lot easier for me as an organizer of events. So, and then also the other activity that I know came to mind for me, at least, was 4th of July. It provides there's discussion in here, a section here on using town resources. I think that's important. Yeah. So happy to talk to you too. I wish you would come to meetings.
Answer my question of what other events caused you to write this? That were ongoing problems with neighbors?
What other events are ongoing problems? I'm not aware of any ongoing events that are problems with neighbors.
But you just said.
And I don't think we need, I don't know that we need to have an ordinance.
Okay, I think what he answered you by saying the other one that has trouble is the 4th of July parade. But the select board actually does this to them to say, hey, look at the ordinance and tell us.
So what I think is they did exactly what you asked them to do. But just like the governor said about education, they really screwed it up. So send it back to them, let them take another whoop at it, and let's not even get people wound up that it might affect things for the next year or so.
Well, Tom, I would really welcome any specific comments on what you think are wrong with the ordinance. So please come.
From my size, but not a Chittenden County sized one.
Right.
Please come. Love to hear you with something specific.
Yeah, we're gonna go over to Phil.
Phil Williams Jr. So my question is how people can do something for 5 years continuously. Okay. And then all of a sudden you change the rules and we can't do it anymore. How's that working for us? Because if I read this right, if the neighbor complains about it, we can't do it. And what is my tractor pull harming in any way?
Is that directed at me, Member Borowski? I'm happy to answer it if it is.
No, I'm just asking. I mean, how is it harming?
Yeah.
In any way?
Well, I think my understanding was that in the case of your specific event, it was happening 4 times a year over the course of 2 to 3 days with significant noise beyond the property line, very close to the resident on the adjacent property. And the general consensus on the planning commission was that was an unreasonable impact on a neighbor. And I should say also, the ordinance, it doesn't mean you can't do it. it means if you were to sort of step through, you probably have, I hope you have, stepped through the ordinance to see how your event would be treated. It would be a major event, which means it's subject to the select board review, as are all event permit applications now. And the select board can, but doesn't have to, put limitations on what they think is appropriate. If the select board decides a tractor pull in this location 4 times a year, going at least 2 days per event is acceptable, then they issue the permit.
Okay, one correction. And this is where
Yes,
the neighbors
please.
stop whining. Is we do it one day. Okay, one day.
Mhm.
4 times a year. It's not 2, 3, 4 days like they try to say. The people come that day, they leave that day. And you're usually out of there by 7, 8 o'clock at the latest. They start coming in around 7 in the morning.
Yeah. Well,
I guess my thing is you're gonna change this all just because people don't agree with what you want to do. How's that fair to everybody else?
I think that question could be asked the other direction also.
You got 2 neighbors. Should this be brought up and put on a ballot to vote on?
Well, I think some good public input as we review the ordinance would be worthwhile. I don't know that it needs to be voted on, but some good input. The Planning Commission talked about it for over a year, and we took the input that we had from the folks participating, and we will continue to.
You've taken the input from them people, but you haven't taken any input from us.
I think what he's offering is that he will.
Okay.
Like, will
Yep.
send this back to the planning commission. They'll spend some time with Perry, with Tom, with you guys, and anybody else that wants to.
Barry's got something in.
Yeah, I just want to say, Jay, I ran 4 winter fests. And I had 3 neighbors up there that were pissed off about it all the time. But yet you guys gave me a permit, okay? Nobody argued it. Everybody had a great time. And then finally the neighbors came around, okay? But in this case, maybe that was just lucky that happened. His neighbors, they're probably not gonna come around. But there's also things you can do here. I know that our permit, that we have for the hotel has a certain dB level that can't exceed its property lines. So there's something you can throw in there, that's another thing that's reasonable. You can cut this off at a certain time. Most of the time it's in the evening. You can't, I think ours is 10 o'clock at the hotel. I know a lot of communities, have a cutoff time of 10. You can't start before a certain time in the morning. So those are kind of things that, if you can work out an ordinance that addresses some of that stuff, maybe that works for them. And then, I kind of agree, it's like, you're never gonna make everybody happy, but I just think that the whole reason we're going down this path is because of that scenario. So count me in, Matt, I'll be there. As long as you pick a day, I'm gonna be around.
All right, we'll schedule around you, Perry.
Gonna schedule around you, Perry.
Yeah, you schedule around me, I'm going forward a couple weeks.
Pat, Patricia Williams. Let me reiterate. The neighbors above us, there is only 4 people on that whole road that object to our
There's
tractor.
only 2. There's only 2.
No.
There's
Judy and
2,
Bill.
Judy and Bill, that family, and Mark and his wife.
So Mark Wallinger and his wife use my property, our property, as their driveway, which is at we could shut the whole of Hilltop down and they would have to find another way to get into their property.
Okay,
So Mark, on the average, drives out in the morning, comes back at noon, drives back out at noon, comes back at night. His wife also does the same thing, and they use our driveway. So let's think about my 4-day tractor pull, of which this past year, we raised and donated $2,000 to charity. Everything, all the profit from the tractor pulls that we do goes to charity. Do they do anything for charity? I have no idea.
Actually,
But every single neighbor on Hilltop except Wallinger comes down to the tractor pull. As a matter of fact, one couple worked at our tractor pull twice this past summer, and the other couple donated $100. So it is a total of 4 people, 2 on each side of the road. And my dad bought that property in 1945. So we've paid taxes on that property since 1945. We should have the right to hold a charity tractor pull, of which we set up usually the morning of the pull, and we take down usually the night of the pull. It is a 1-day event. They park on our private property. They do not park along the road. They do not park on anybody else's property. And they do not impede the driveway, so the Hilltop people can still have access to their property. And this is because we make a little bit of noise, but that has also been documented that the train that goes through town makes more noise than any tractors that we have. And a lot of people's lawnmowers make more noise than the tractors. And 90% of the people that come to our tractor pull are business owners. And if you go by that property after we've had a tractor pull, you will not see one piece of garbage on the property. Not one. Is there any other event where people are that respectful of property?
one other thing I will add is we have some that stay at Perry's Motel because they drive up from Massachusetts. So they spend money in town. They'll go to the barn and get gas and stuff like that. They've gone down to the Forge and 8, stuff like that. So, you know, we're kind of bringing a little bit into this community. Maybe that's something we need to think about too.
Bethany Silhouette again. I just want to echo what Phil was just saying about what these events often bring to our community. We, like Perry mentioned, we host our Gals Going Out. It's a private event that we completely fund on our own, as a thank you to the people that support our farm and our neighbors that deal with our noise every year, because we make a lot of noise, we make a lot of smell. And my cousin makes firewood and he does it at 5:30 in the morning sometimes, and it's way more annoying than his tractor pull. But it's all part of living where I live and living near a farm. So I think that some people just kind of need to deal with some of that stuff. I smile every time I drive by that tractor pull, because my horse is over in that area, and it's a great event, and they're right, it's clean. And it makes me happy. So thank you. I think the neighbors should go watch it. But yeah, they're coming, they're staying in the hotel, they're going to eat breakfast in the morning. Like I said, they're buying gas, they're bringing revenue to our community. This is just adding one more layer that makes things more difficult for us to do things like this, and agritourism and things like that, where like, and how much is this going to cost me to come apply for this permit, and who gets to decide if it's approved or not approved? Because can you tell me that I can't have this event on my own private property? And I think that there's a big difference in the village and versus outside of the village. Because I think there should be a lot of restrictions in the village. And I think some of these events that have been listed are very appropriate to go through a permitting process with Last Mile Ride, Winterfest. Like I've been a part of all of those and it's very, very appropriate because we need the town police. We need resources from the town to make that happen. An event I host at my house personally, I don't need that. They're parking on my land. We're managing all of that. So I think the number does need to increase. I think the location of where it's occurring needs to be considered, and I'm very happy to hear that this is not getting passed tonight. It's going to be re-reviewed. So again, happy to also add to that. You know, people know what they're, you know, they sometimes know when you're buying land. If you buy land in Tunbridge next to the Tunbridge Fair, well, it's going to be a good long week of chaos, and you know that's part of it. If you don't like it, move and sell your house. All happily help you in here.
They're selling quick too.
Yeah.
I'd also like to just remind the group, when they go back to the planning commission, that adding any noise element to it is going to require that you have a separate noise ordinance that will be enforceable everywhere. Because right now, all you have is noise in the night, a state statute. It doesn't start till after 10 o'clock at night. Noise in the night. You have no other noise ordinance in this town or in this state. So think about that. And think about, is this the Vermont thing? Are you just trying to make where you came from just as miserable as the place you came from? You say the place you escaped to that you liked, but now you don't like.
So Matt, I had somebody call me and ask me a question on this, and I don't know the answer and I haven't had a chance to look at it, but is there a state exemption for agriculture events?
Yes.
Yes. That should be listed in here.
As the former Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, I can tell you that if it's an agricultural event, including a tractor pull, that if they get taken in, I will provide the defense fund for them.
Yeah, so,
So bring it up.
but I just, like, the question was about open houses, like the maple producers have an open house every year and whatnot. And should we be listing that in anything we do as being exempt from here? And I have it on my list, but I haven't done the research on it, so it's just another piece of the puzzle before we bring this into another draft, but.
It's any agricultural event that follows standard practices of husbandry. So it's a standard ag practice in any place.
Isn't that all our houses?
Those that live in the village like me, no. But an ag practice is covered.
Yeah.
Trini, I don't know the specific answer to that question, but I would think so. I mean, really, our intent was that any activity, even if an accessory use of an approved use of land or a business, that would be okay and exempt from a permit. So if those open houses are a customary and use of an agricultural land, then it would be exempt from the permit. That has always been the intent.
And it just, the question was asked and I was like, well, I don't know what the rules are around that or whatnot, but we might
More
want
to do with solicitation and sales though on property. So I don't find it, I used to know it.
Yeah, I know, I was like, well, I've heard about it, but. And the only other one I got a lot on was the same thing that Bethany brought up, which is if you own. 2/10 of an acre and your house is taking up most of that, the rules for you to have 100 people there for an event should probably be a little different than somebody who has 100 acres of land. Out in the middle of nowhere, and no neighbors can see you and wants to have an event. And that kind of rings true for me too, like. If I can park 100 cars on my property, have an event and deal with it right there. That's a little different than somebody who's in a middle of a village setting and is gonna be parking cars all up and down every side road around them, but.
I can tell you in other communities, busing is required.
I'm sorry,
If somebody has an event at their house.
Say that again.
So if somebody has an event at their house in a situation like that, because I put tents on literally these postage size stamps of property, but in order for them to have that event, I think most of these times the past things in village areas, So they're required to provide transportation, so they don't have cars parking all over the street.
Yeah.
I see.
But that's a pretty rare thing, like, it doesn't happen a lot, so.
It's a nightmare.
I also think charging for the event versus it being something free too should be something like considered in there, because if you're.
Tired of those free.
Yeah.
That was free to the public.
Yeah, you know, Bethany, we did consider that whether it was a for-profit event or not, and ultimately decided it didn't matter. Ultimately, because it's really, this is really to protect adjacent property owners and protect public roads, that sort of thing. And so whether it's for-profit or not, we ultimately decided was not relevant. That was our call.
Thing, a non-for-profit thing has a lot to do with the landowner liability laws in the state of Vermont. That's why I never charged for the Winterfest. Even though we made everybody sign waivers, okay, we weren't charging. So that's a liability issue. However, you know, when we did do the Winterfest, you know, we did all our due diligence, you know, we no parking signs on the streets, all those things. That's why we bus people up there. So you do need some form of regulations, just like I said, let's just get down to a number that works and, you know, figure out, you know, what it looks like, and then we can hash around some more from there. But I think we need to clean this up a little bit so that it's not so dramatic.
Okay.
Well, I think the next time we can talk about it, planning commission would be the first Monday of February. I see Alex, our zoning director there. So we could get on the agenda for the first month, our meeting in February.
Wait a minute, because you were gonna do this around Perry's schedule.
I can tell you.
So.
Yeah, I keep checking my mail and he hasn't sent me a schedule yet, but yes, we'll do it around Perry.
You can find my email, you send me the schedule.
First Monday.
Yeah.
All right, good. One more comment in the back.
Just to reiterate, we do carry event insurance. The pullers all sign the waiver, and we do not charge spectators.
Cool.
And when we started this was during COVID. And I went through Governor Scott, who referred me to his administrative assistant and got approval through the agricultural department, stating that they could not stop us from having it.
Sounds like it's headed back. Planning commission will have some fun. They've got some folks coming to chat with them.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens on version 2. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. 27 budget and capital improvement plan.
We'll try to be brief and entertaining, given the length of time you've been in the South area.
I'm not sure which is more important, entertaining, but.
I'll try to do both. I will endeavor to do both. I got some handouts. I'll put some stuff up on the screen. We got these up, finished up today. So the first handout is just the top sheet for the 27 budget.
You're gonna budget. Perfect. And then they were gone.
So this is I got 3.
Yeah.
That's what John came for.
Yeah.
Vote me in the beginning. And it goes around here.
You're supposed to bring the pizza and beer.
I know. If I'd only known.
I got charged for you.
Oh, wait.
I just want to say, send all those along and make sure I can square away.
I know.
Hey, so-
You're not thankful.
Yeah, I think one of 4.
I need just have an extra copy of that.
You got what?
Budget.
He's just barely getting them out. We haven't seen that.
Oh,
You don't get it before us. Who do you think you are?
Then we get it at the same time.
I don't know. There probably is.
I only have the copies for here. I'm gonna put it up on the screen, so it's not.
Oh, you get the screen version.
Yeah.
These are a little bit tiny, so.
Yeah.
It's actually. Yeah. It's not the one. It's not. Yeah. There, guys.
It's all right, we got all night.
Okay. Move this out of the way a little bit. You got
So
So
John's
usually,
going after the pizza, so.
it's usually what he thoughts.
The pizza place still open?
So we try to start this process usually in December with an overview to the extent we can. We've been on time, we've been a little bit later depending on staffing and other issues. So when we set out the budget schedule a while ago, this was the night we'd highlighted for this introductory one. You'll see in the packets, there's a table that lays out when to bring in the various departments. So in January, you've got at least 4 meetings already scheduled that are all detailed, right? We'll dig into the individual lines. They'll have department heads in. We can pull in other entities or agencies depending on whose budget is up where and when. And so we'll start on January 8th with an overview. We'll do a few departmental budgets. We'll generally stay in the general fund. We might do a few other ones, do a capital program and overview, and then walk it out from there. In terms of how you do that, the 29th of January is really the end point. So when you think about from where we are now to the end, and that's because we're starting to butt up against when we have to warn town meeting. It's probably the last day. And so we've highlighted that you may have to make a change in the in-between. For the schedule, if you want to do extra. So if we get to the 22nd and there's still.
A cup.
It's in.
How many? It's in the board.
Yep.
We're doing 2 in January.
And then we do, we can do up to 2 public sort of events. We have to do 1 by statute prior to town meeting. We usually do that the Monday before. We got to be within a certain number of days of the day of actual voting. These are all Australian ballot. There's also the Saturday morning event that we've used as a pseudo hearing. I mean, it's sort of that town meeting discussion, and we've sometimes done another one at the February meeting if we haven't jammed them together into that special meeting evening. So we'll do those. Town report also has to go to the printer at the end of January, so that's the other reason why we're sort of facing that as a timeline there. So I'll just do a quick overview of some of the funds. What you don't have here in the expenditure summary is obviously the revenue piece of it. We're not anticipating big changes in the general fund, highway fund, library fund, these special appropriations in the ambulance. Those are all either property tax completely in the case of special appropriations and the ambulance, or property tax dominant. The general fund's probably the least reliant on it because it has a few other revenue sources that the others don't have. When we look at water and wastewater briefly, those are what we call enterprise funds, meaning that users pay for those through their water and sewer rates. And so they're walled off separately from there. These are the budgets largely unedited from departments. So we've gone through a round or 2 internally, talked about what everybody needed and why. And then I'll try to highlight a few things that are still missing in terms of what we've got to put together between here and January 8th. And then also talk a little bit about how, when we see the capital sheet, how these 2 tie together. Yes. So I'll just start at the top. The general funds, obviously our largest of the different categories. You can see we're up a little bit right here. This number here was, I was playing around. One of the things, and I'll talk about a little bit later, is a pay and classification study that's kind of an odd duck there. I'll talk about that. To pay no attention to that number. It's a holdover from an exercise earlier today. But you see in certain categories, we are either close to inflationary rates, depending on what the category is. In some cases, we have some large reductions. If you'll remember from the last few years, we've been talking about fiscal 27 as the start of some reductions in debt service. And you'll see this here in the highway fund. There are a couple of mixed bonds for everything from stormwater to paving projects that are in these different funds. And then we've had some lease to own payments for vehicles and equipment that have come off the books between 26 and 27. So some of those reductions there. The reduction in planning and zoning is that we're in a contract model with Alex, and this is year 2 of that, plus a little bit of extra money for supporting the town plan process, plus a few other odds and ends, but it's still shorter. That was a full-time position before. And then one of the things that's currently squeezed into this administration line is a grants management person. to which we would dedicate that. We could also maybe try to find somebody who could handle some additional communications and other tasks. So really hit on a couple of areas of need. There is some revenue to offset those expenses in the general fund. We did not realize anywhere near what we had put in when we had started with Jeff. Much part because we haven't had anybody formally in the role for a while as well. So we've tamped down some of those expectations as well. Health insurance, by and large, the general fund did okay because we had a couple of employees who left and have been replaced with people on the health insurance buyout. So we lost a family plan at $42,000 and change basically, and replaced it with a single person buyout at $5,000 in that next fiscal year. And we have those numbers move with our collective bargaining agreements. We've been inching those up, scratch them up, I suppose, but we've been inching them up to try to make them a little more enticing. They're nowhere near, when you think about the cost of health insurance and compare different plans you might have available. And so there's that, but you'll see in some of the other funds where we don't have buyout candidates, that's where there's a little more pressure from those health insurance costs. We got relatively lucky in that we're in the overall exchange. Our premium rates, we were really conservative in estimating them for the current fiscal year. Excuse me. So the year-over-year increase doesn't look as bad because it wasn't as dramatic. And we're still carrying an assumption that there's going to be a 10% increase in this draft in the second half of the fiscal year. So our health insurance rates are still calendar year basis, which means for our fiscal year budgeting, we split them up into 6 months of the premium number we know, and then 6 months of the premium number we know times some kind of inflationary metrics. We tend to try to keep that high in the earlier drafts. For the last few years, they were, double digit, and then this last year was a little bit lower. I forget where it ended up in the aggregate statewide, 5 to 7%, and that felt like a relief. And so you'll see those different pressures sprinkled throughout. In the general fund, there isn't too much else that's new or unusual. The town clerk treasurer's line is up in that there's a half-time position that we're trying to budget for that we've done with vacancy savings. It's been pretty useful. There's also 3 elections and a primary scheduled for next year. Reserve funding, we're trying to, again, add a little bit extra in building reserves and a few other places where we know we have needs come. Actually, building reserve stays level, but there's a few others. Cemetery reserve, we essentially emptied out as part of a truck purchase for buildings and grounds. So we need to rebuild that, even though there isn't any project that's pressing at this point. Just below that in the highway fund budget, you'll see in the aggregate, it's up, the overall total is 9.4%. There are a few big areas that we have in this draft. This one right here in operating. Excuse me. A lot of this is tied to the cost of materials too, in particular chloride, which we've used a lot more of, and especially road salt. With the $25 to $30 per ton increase in prices. This would still be at a safe roads at safe speeds policy level. It would give us a little additional wiggle room to maybe be a little more expansive in our use to match sort of historic trends. And so we'll see how this year goes as we start with these I don't call them odd storms, anywhere from 3 to 5 inches at a time. It's enough to roll out to use materials, but we haven't had to do a snow removal event yet because they haven't sort of built that kind of bulk though. Monday morning, you're in town early. Look out, John and the guys will be picking up snow. So chloride was up substantially. There's a few other materials costs that are in there. The maintenance operation and maintenance and administration, these both are tied to vehicle and other vehicle-related expenses, the cost of mechanic, which you'll see in the highway fund. There are some revenues tied to our contract with the school. We still have a few years left on that as it exists. And at some point, we should start thinking about what the future looks like with that. And then in the reserve funding, we've tried to really boost those up, at least in this draft. So you see there's an extra $47,000 in change, and it's really in a couple of spots. Paving reserve, the vehicle and equipment reserve, and the sidewalk reserve are both up because as you saw, we want to try to get some of those projects done. There's got to be some additional funds in where we didn't increase them though, say the gravel road reserve or the stormwater reserve, those both have really healthy balances. And we're going to use some of those funds for some of the projects that you see a little bit when we look at the capital top sheet for 27. So those are the general increases there. The library fund is up. They're coming in on the 15th. This is entered exactly as it was submitted to me. And they'll be able to give you the details. We've forwarded some of the details before. I'll make sure you have all of them prior to the 8th. At this present time, I haven't put any increase in for the special appropriations. These are the petitioned articles or the articles for organizations that are voted on separately. Also because we haven't come up to the deadline. We've heard some want to be up, some want to be up substantially, but until those start to roll in, we don't know what those numbers could be. Some years they don't move very much at all. Last year they moved quite a bit, but that was really, I think the food shelf had a big ask in there that was approved by voters. So sometimes it's one entity, sometimes it's a group of entities, sometimes it stays relatively low. So until we see those toward the end of the month, we don't exactly know. Water fund and wastewater fund are both up a little bit. Operating personnel costs primarily in each case. Another example where I mentioned earlier, we got lucky in the general fund going from a family to a buyout. We were unlucky a little bit, and we went the other way. So some of those, when you look at the admin costs, there's some increased health insurance costs. We got somebody on a family plan replaced. Somebody who was on one of the less expensive plans. And the ambulance services have just built it in at a 5% increase. I wasn't able to attend. They had a little meeting for some of the municipal members this morning, so I don't know where they're going to land. I suspect we'll have that number soon. But I just put it in there. That seems to be pretty close to year-over-year averages. So we'll see where that is. Last year, we broke that out to be a separate question. So that the voters can vote on it individually. When I started here, it's what, we're up to 415 for this fiscal year. When I started, we were right around 310, I think it was. I have to go back and look for sure, but so in a few fiscal years, we've ratcheted up as their cost for paramedics and different elements of their business have changed. And so that's kind of the quick and dirty overview of where I would really caution everybody. This is a first draft. One of the projects that's not incorporated in here that I've talked about for years and we want to do. And when we get into some of the details of the budgets, I think you'll better understand why is that we've got to do pay classification sort of mini study. Make sure everybody's paid equitably, not just in the organization, but in comparison to other organizations. So we've got the VLCT Bible of those. It's a good starting spot. We'll probably have to create some benchmarks, figure out what those numbers are. So some folks might come back in a later version and you might see some proposed increases in different salary costs for department heads and or other essential frontline employees, we'll call them. People who are really processing any number of things that are holding the business and the operation afloat and have some responsibility. And sort of outstrips maybe where you sort of think of them, you could just look at them in an org chart, where they're great value to us and to everybody they work with. So we'll probably work that in there. We just got this week or two ago, so we'll go through that and start from there so that you can have kind of a data-centric look. And it's one that's centered in Vermont data, and we'll see how it shakes out in terms of how we compare with the people who are most like us. Size, scale, scope. So we'll look a little, you'll see towns that are a little bit bigger population-wise, some that are maybe a little bit smaller, but have a little more robust of a service footprint. But you won't see us compare ourselves to some of our smaller neighbors or certainly not to the larger Chittenden County municipalities. Further distance into the same scaling and responsibilities.
Trevor, I know this is a quick and dirty overview, but I can't help but wonder about the wastewater and the water budgets. Are going up significantly, but we haven't changed the rates in a long time, and that's how it's mostly funded. So how can we increase the rates when we don't have more revenue coming in or from? I mean, maybe we have some because we have additional allocations and such, but I'm off the top of my head guessing that that's not a very large number.
Right, and so these are just what the expenses to run the railroad are. And one of the things that we do want to do, but I don't know that we'd be able to get it done before March, just from a capacity standpoint. The new finance director has done different rate studies, but many of them. And we've got some of that preliminary stuff, so we do need to do a rate study, probably an ordinance change, tie those rate changes a little more automatically to inflationary factors like other municipalities do. So we don't get into this accordion situation that we've had here in the past where rates stay really stagnant. And then suddenly there has to be kind of a pretty dramatic increase. And so we're gonna try to plan around there being a dramatic increase, but there might be a few years where rates have to step up in some form depending on different factors. So that is part of the mix. We can see, we'll try to break those down there. When you get into the detail lines, you'll see what the other revenue lines look like. There's some new magical revenue source for me.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. And then just really quickly. This one's gonna be a little harder to see for everybody. I'll try to blow it up. I understand. It will probably confuse me in the finite piece. I'll put this down over there, so now.
Is the large water improvement project getting picked down with that road? Wasn't there like a multi-million-dollar?
The Northwest project is already done. You'll see the first year of debt service.
Replacement of pipes or something, wasn't there?
In there. Well, we've talked about a project on Maple Street. I mean, this has been it's been a while. So at some point we'll have to figure out what that looks like. The last estimate was I think just north of 2 million, right around that mark. So that was a few years ago. And the reason that one's so expensive is it's water line, that includes everything: water line, wastewater line, pavement, sidewalks, curbing, the whole. You have to move some utility poles. It's a pretty expansive one. So that's one of those areas we'll need to do that. But in terms of our actual facilities, with the North Wells, the new well control building, the new reservoir, the South Reservoir we call Pinnacle is in great shape. One of the projects to consider is what do we do with Pearl Street? Are there different treatment options for the manganese in particular? Because the capacity is so great. Being able to introduce those new water sources has, at least anecdotally, seemed to lower some of the discoloration calls. Unless or until we experience some other disruption in service, water main breaks, some of those sort of stop starts.
Fires. It's good.
Fires.
Fire.
The drought conditions slid us a little more over into Pearl Street as the capacity, and so there was a slight increase of at least mild discoloration type calls. Some of that could be we could put filtration on, we could treat the manganese to an undetectable level, and people still may see that in individual circumstances. There's also the component of those service lines into the houses, depending on age, condition, type, could be part of the mix too in some cases. And Chris and the guys who've gone in, that's what they've seen a little bit. Yep. We'd add the lines in here too. Made sure we added some of these in. So this is our, just for 27, there'll be one of these sheets for each year of the capital programs. When you get that, you'll have that, a 5-year look. And we'll try to take you through some of the individual categories. So paving in particular, vehicles, sidewalks based on the master plan inventory. So this is just what it would look like in the next fiscal year. So we start from here and then build out. Because we're applying reserves and a few other things. So everything out has to be adjusted. So just running you quickly through the way we kind of from left to right put these is that we try to tell you what sort of the funding source is. So general fund, highway fund, police fund, enterprise, those are the ones with reserve funds currently set up. When we're using reserve funding, these two categories tell you how much and from which reserve. And then if we have grant funding or other funding, we added this category when we had ARPA funds. It'll probably collect significant dust before we ever use again. I'm debating whether or not to even leave it there. And maybe shorten the table a little bit. And then the grant funding in these capital program ones, just sort of note, we put these here to sort of show what they could be. But if we don't end up with that grant, we either wouldn't do that project at all or as designed. So we wouldn't spend those reserves. So those don't get sent out the door unless we're at that spot. And in these two cases, this number here, the 300, was tied to one of those scoping study projects. I just put it in for one of the grant programs at the Max Award. Saw a draft of the scoping study yesterday. We're gonna have to look at a different program with a higher threshold for the lowest cost option of the 3 expansions.
Contracts are crazy expensive.
Yeah, I was thinking, heck, this will give us 360. It's a relatively flat grade down Weston. You don't have slopes, you don't have some of the things you battle in a couple of the other ones. But that one could come in around 500 and change based on, and that's a total project cost, so it has engineering and contingency and all that. The other one is a municipal park and ride grant that we're in the process for. I got a fairly low award. It's one pool of money and everybody gets in, and then you get an award based on everybody else who's in. But that would let us do the Pleasant Street parking lot over. So improve the pavement, improve the stormwater system that's there, and improve, paint some lines, dedicate some spaces. That one's been on everybody's wish list for a while in terms of when you ask me what I hear about. That's one of those projects, but just to kind of
directly at me for that.
Yeah. Just we're half the square out. But to kind of run you through some of the categories really quick. And so we've got the transfers to different reserves. In some cases, we're trying to rebuild them or we're paying back other funds based on a truck purchase we did out of cycle for buildings and grounds. The facilities reserve fund, I've left it at this level. Once we get the results of the FCA RFP back, we can start to program out from there. It's got a healthy enough balance to everything it's committed to. Answers sort of any unexpected things that come up, like the heating and cooling system here did last fiscal year. And then we're likely gonna have to try to figure out how to increase that to meet the building need once we know what it is. And so that one stays. Fire equipment reserve is up a little bit. You'll see this when we get into the budget details. We have 9 trucks across 3 fire departments, and a number of them are ending or at that useful years of life of service. So at some point we have to have a very serious, very potentially expensive, emotionally and financially conversation about which trucks, what order, how do we pay for them? Because it's millions and millions of dollars if we
I think the bigger conversation too is what's the right number of trucks for the size of our town, and that's where the emotionally charged conversation is gonna happen. But like every time we've applied through the FEMA process for their fund, their firefighting fund, we get denied. We don't even make it through to be considered because we have too many trucks.
And we did, trying to think what year that was. It was at least 2 years ago, if not 3. And I'll revive that table for these conversations too, where we did sort of work with Fire Services Advisory, had them sort of prioritize which 5 trucks basically would you want, what order, rough out costs based on what we saw for the prices at that time, plus some presumed agreed upon inflator. So what would the cost be? And how far out would you be for truck 1 versus truck 5? And if you hit truck 5, you were 2045, 2055, kind of best case scenario. It was quite a bit out there. So some of the other, there's an equipment reserve transfer out of the general fund that's been there for years. The paving reserve transfer is increased a little bit, and then you'll see as you kind of go over to where we want to spend out of the reserves over here. This is for 2 projects. We're going to try to stay on the east side of the interstate next summer if we can, just in case the class 1 paving's coming through, because it's fiscal year 27. So that could be after July 1, in which case we don't want to make everything less convenient than it's already going to be. South Randolph Road's been on our list and been one of the last roads out a couple of times. And then there's some sections of Ridge Road that we've got to get done. So a little less than our overall goal, trying to be close to 2 miles a year, but certainly 2 high priority areas on the other side of town. And there's quite a bit of paving that's coming here in the village. We've done quite a bit. So those class 1 projects will cover all of those. So you're talking Central Park, Main, and Forest. Up to sort of where you can probably see the seams if you drove each of those now. gives you a pretty good sense of where they're gonna go. And then we have in here, there's sort of a mix. I mentioned that park and ride grant, the gravel reserve road reserve transfer, we haven't increased. There's a healthy balance in there. We try to resurface. Certain number of miles every year. We'll often tie it to the grants and aid projects. So sometimes we don't hit the mileage marker, but we do hit high priority areas when you think about mud season, when you think about road erosion inventory, when you think about water quality. We use that road erosion inventory that TRORC helps us with, that the state requires us to do. And we sort of pick projects based on that to the extent we can, much like the sidewalk inventory. You saw there's red, yellow, and then green is if we're good, or purple. And we're actually it's looking better each time we do it. We have a fair amount of things, roads in good shape. Ferris Road was a big project that a lot of people probably didn't see at the time, haven't seen since. But one that was pretty necessary we were able to do some safety improvements there too, where we changed curb shapes and widened some areas that were narrow and took out some trees that were a little problematic.
But there was like no mud season on that road this year.
Yeah.
It was nice.
So we're thinking, I don't know that there's been a project pick. We usually work with Rita, and it's kind of around this time of year and in the spring that we sort of take that and boil it down into an actual project. And then it's a roughly 25,000-ish award from the state. And we match it with labor and in kind. And we've got our gravel road reserve where we'll buy materials or rent equipment. Sometimes we'll get reimbursed for some of those costs. So that's been pretty effective. And then we usually do that with our own labor as well. Got a talented crew. We've upgraded a lot of the equipment through ARPA. Part of why we don't have a lot of vehicle and equipment replacements in this one is because we've been pretty aggressive with that for years, and it's time to let that reserve breathe a little bit. We've done new loaders, we've done new graders, we've done new trucks. The excavator, yeah. If we could hopefully make it through a year without somebody demolishing truck. That would help us out. That's put a little pressure on the vehicle fund at times.
Well, they do that when you're gone, so don't take any time.
Just don't go anywhere. John gave me credit for there being no more floods, said I put a dome over town, but I don't know. Figured out how that one worked.
You got the whole state though, so good job.
You do your best, right? There are some other reserve transfer. One of the projects we've added, another one that we hear a lot about, that will make it maintenance a lot easier, is if we could pave the parking lots at the recreation field both sides. And down at the rink where the pavement is either non-existent or in interesting shape. So we've got that in there. It's a split between the recreation reserve and the stormwater reserve because they both have a role in it, and keep some of the recreation reserve money for later projects as we start to think about something maybe a little bigger, such as the pool house, for example. And then we do some stormwater improvements that these are often separate from projects we do for grant state. So these could be culverts. They could be, we don't have a lot of in-ground infrastructure. Obviously, we're a gravel road, so culvert projects, smaller, more dedicated mud types of spaces. Sometimes we might even use it as a funding source for a larger gravel road project if we have one. So again, this will get shaped as we figure out what that grants and aid project will be. And then there's a police transfer. And then we purchased a jetter. So you see a couple of these. There's a lease payment. Front end loader 10-wheeler was one of the trucks we purchased. The vibratory roller. Those were all lease to own, so 5-year agreements. I think they're all in lease in year 5, except the 10-wheeler, which would be 27 year 2, I believe. So that's our baseline for what we're proposing right now. I'll mention with the sidewalks, I'd mentioned the grant funded project. There's also a sidewalk repair program. We've used it and done this in the past. We did some of the work ourselves this year, but it was a much smaller patch area on Main Street. This 37-750 is pulled from that inventory, and it hits a couple of those. I don't know if you remember, there were different tables for sort of the low hanging, easy to implement, big condition and improvement outcome. So they're pulled from that list. So it's that section of Church Street where the hill comes down. That's another area we hear about quite frequently. There's some sections on Pleasant Street that kind of come along the back street in Merchants Row. tied into that, a little bit of a no man's land right there. And then there was a third smaller piece I think we put in there. To see if there's anything left from Randolph House to the laundromat that we can improve, because it's another area we hear about quite a bit. We did some patchwork there. But taking it out of the table and going back and revisiting to make sure we got everything, because we did with fairly narrow scope. Over the area need, and then it'll be trying to figure out how to make all of those different pieces work. But this is a nice area that we finally have sort of a full data set, or at least a more complete one than we've ever had. To create a 5+ year plan, and then as part of that, we'll have to determine what the useful life of a sidewalk is. Got a pretty good idea of what that is for different pieces of equipment, vehicles. A pretty good idea how we would handle that from a paved road perspective. Let's figuring out what works. We'll look for other people's metrics. We'll look for best practices. We'll look sort of based on our own experience. Sidewalk type will matter. Sidewalk component will matter. The sidewalk might deteriorate. If concrete and the granite curbing will be fine and reusable, or be the issue. It's going to have a different life cycle. So this is all an iterative process. Even when we get to the point where you warn it for town meeting, it's your sort of best guess at both what are the policy and project priorities, what are things that we need to do to offer service in a reliable and consistent way. And then we'll have to make adjustments as we go, because people come, people go, life changes, weather happens. Anybody tells you they can budget perfectly, they know how they're doing, but.
So there's 2 projects that should be on here, or to at least start them. And one is an actual space for the police department. Where they are now is just awful. We should be looking at sort of what that looks like. And what we need to do and whatnot. And the other one is the Randolph Center Highway Garage, where the roof is questionable. And what we do with that. Is it a roof replacement? Is it a building replacement? Kind of what is, that's got a pretty, well, they're 2 pretty big items that are coming, but they're like not coming, they're here.
Yeah, they may be a little ahead of that facilities assessment. Or be on an alternate parallel curve. And with the center garage conversation too, if we're talking about capital improvements, especially if it's the building stays and we fix the roof, then we've got to do the septic system rather than a holding tank. Which then puts us in a conversation with the school about where the buses go. Because the viable place is the you need for that. So
I think it's also gonna push the conversation of where the Randolph Center Fire Station ends up, because where they are now is pretty tight, and there's a lot of talk about space and where they should be, and this is gonna all translate into your how many trucks is the right number and where do things belong and whatnot. But if the discussion leads to just a roof, that's one path. If it really leads to needing to replace the structure, now it would make sense to have the conversation about the location for the fire also, and put it in, kind of into one place. But I do think that if anybody takes a tour in there and sees where our police department is, it's pretty.
I think nasty is the technical term. I think.
Yeah. And it's not someplace that we should have employees, and there's been a variety of things talked about, from adding on to this building to going into where the fire station is to whatever. But I think that we might want to kick that off and start that conversation sooner rather than later on kind of where things are at and what we're doing. Yeah, but guns. Got a question, Heather, on about it?
Yeah, this is Heather Bowman. Trevor, I was hoping that you could shed some light, bring some clarity to why there's not a library capital reserve fund on that list.
I have no idea what the history of that is, and everything's been paid for out of the building reserve, and we covered this last time, I believe, as well, at last meeting.
Well, we asked for it, but there was no.
And there was a history, if I recall, and I'm not trying to be short, we've just already done this.
Does that mean it's beneficially denied?
I can't put things on the warning for consideration.
So Heather, this is the first draft of the budget plan for what the capital line items look like. And you've asked for a brand new fund to be created for one building versus using the building fund that everybody's used. That conversation hasn't taken place yet. This is just Trevor's first glimpse at kind of these are where the demands are right now in the existing and how it translates into this form. So there'll be more detailed discussion as he went over already, that each of these is gonna get a much more detailed breakout on the schedule that's in the board packet. And so as each of those comes up, that's when there'll be a more in-depth conversation about sort of what are the line items in that budget, how are we funding it, what are the revenue sources, how does all that piece work? So tonight is not about creating more reserve funds, it's not about creating anything new. It's just a first stab at, these are the big totals. And the detail will come on these schedules.
Okay. Perhaps we're not talking about the same thing, so.
We're talking about the same thing.
The last meeting, the library requested that a reserve fund for the library be established. And there was talk, but as far as I'm aware, there was no up or down vote for if that was going to happen. So since I'm looking at the paperwork here and the library capital reserve fund is not on it, does that mean it's been officially denied?
The library doesn't come up until January 15th on the schedule. There is no library reserve fund at this point, so it wouldn't be on this list yet.
Has there been any vote taken on it yet?
None. There's been no conversation on it. You introduced it last month. When we talk about the library budget, it'll be on January 15th. And that's when that conversation will take place.
And so just to clarify, that would be the time where asking for a general reserve for the library would happen. That would be the appropriate forum.
That's where, when we'll take up all the stuff that's in the library budget, we'll go through your budget, we'll talk about all those things in it, whether a reserve fund gets created by building or as a one fund for all the buildings.
Okay, so January 15th would be the appropriate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and I also noticed that the library was totally missing from that list of expenditures. And we all in this room know that the library has some pretty big building needs. Can you speak to that as to why the library is not on that list?
There isn't a separate project currently scheduled for, that was just a list of 27. And so the money's held in the reserve for the cupola, the 140 you designated back in 21 or 22. That fits into the planning efforts, but there's not a project that's specific to the library at this time. And that just like there's not a project right now specific to this building. Or one specific to the police, which is why we're doing the facility assessment. So we get a sense of what projects need to be done and what order they need to be done with limited funds. That's, oh my goodness, we've had this, I'm trying not to be frustrated, but we have gone through this tonight about when the facilities assessment is going out. There are some numbers that need to be added to provide some square footage for some of the buildings. Once those are done, we can publish the RFP, there's a roughly a month turnaround, and then we'll come back to you for award. So we won't probably have them for this exercise because the timing doesn't work. So we put the money into the facilities reserve the same as other years. If there are projects that come up, we will be able to fund them, much like we did when the heating and cooling system broke. That was close to 50 grand. The idea is to get to a better planning spot where everything can be considered in totality. And then we can prioritize them based on need, and based on condition, and based on available funds. But we aren't there yet. We're not going to be there today. We're not going to be there because you asked 3 times in a night. Like, this is the process we're working.
But you also usually with government and with a town structure, when you have multiple buildings, you don't just prioritize by building, you prioritize by all the needs the town has.
It's currently one reserve for everybody.
Do you have something equivalent to a balance sheet where we know what the building fund reserves are that carry over? Right, we see what we're putting in this year, but
When we do the full capital build out, there'll be a reserves table in there that'll show you sort of by year. We'll have sort of a current balance as of the day that's live.
right,
That ties into a little bit with the 25 audit, making sure that those numbers are finalized. We're closer, but not there. We're gonna provide a little push to the auditor. They're tracked in real time in our system, so we can say as of today. But we will provide that with everything so that you can see how the spending plan that uses the reserves and spends them out, so we don't get into year 4 or 5. Have a project and have.
right,
But that's all work that has to be stitched together.
okay.
Yeah. So
We're
we're
also
working
seeing
on
some
it.
of this where knowing what's coming, some of the balances, some of the amounts are being adjusted to,
How much is in there?
Right.
Yeah.
For
it's a piece of the puzzle. You're right.
So the goal for tonight was just to show you the projects that are currently on the list. That's all that document is. You can add to it, you can amend, you can take stuff away as we get through the process. But that's everything that was queued up coming in to right now.
Very helpful.
Next, do we have on our wonderful list? Dedication for 2022. Consider dedication. Anybody have any ideas?
Judy, I thought had a good one today. We were talking that we've had a number of notable residents pass away in the last year. So there may be an in memoriam, other similar kind of program might be one idea. We've had what, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. Different folks who contributed to the town for years, different formats, formal service, informal service. That was one idea. If we don't have a single candidate wanting to do an Oscar style honorarium or something like that.
And we also have any reports for mine and her.
What you got, Judy?
I'd like to see us balance it so that the people we're recognizing aren't always just in the village and whatnot. And so I did my little in my brain traveling around the dirt roads. I think the component would be a good one to recognize. They're extremely active with the youth, with the 4-H. All kinds of agriculture focused stuff. They've been a family that's contributed in a lot of ways to the town, more to the rural part of the town, probably than the village part of the town, but. Next couple. Kept the landscape open. I don't know, they're part of the Grange, they're part of the Grange. Schools, just stuff in the school.
Did we have any, maybe vote for those suggestions or? Have like some like notable, folks who passed away this one time, or is that getting too deep into it?
It's getting a little into it. Some of them we've already recognized. So some of the ones that passed have already gotten the Brown report dedicated, right?
I had said it just, there seemed like quite a few, John Osha, Al Floyd, Harry Chase, Nat Draco. Just seemed like quite a few this year.
Didn't we do that? We just a few years ago.
I know we
His
did.
daughter helped us.
I did look through some old ones and I did see one for John and one for Al and Jan together. I think I thought.
And then we did Clayton Butterfield.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
the algae were together. Since we brought it up this way, I do kind of like the idea that we recognize some significant community members who have passed. Like, that seems like a nice thing that we could have as a tradition starting now. And it doesn't have to be a big thing, but it could be, you know, just 1 or 2 sentences for each person, and we would be a short list, and then we can have another section on the same page that would be for someone who's still around, who can be recognized for, you know, well, how they can appreciate it. And having, maybe that's kind of a nice, you know, balance of
The only limitation to your imagination is the page count of the report, so talking about 2 pages, probably okay. We can try to think buttress some. We got 98 pages to play with or whatever it is.
And the other for the recognition, do we do it that way? Of those. I mean, is it
Yeah,
as
we
blunt as
dedicate the
those
town
that
report to so-and-so for their ongoing contributions to the community. We would also like to recognize the following people who have passed in the last year, because they've also made significant, contributions to our town over a long period of time, something like that.
Okay, how do we make sure we get them all so we don't?
I was thinking too, I was like, oh, man.
We're brainstorming here, yeah.
I think it's a great idea, it's that one time we miss somebody that.
Yeah, I mean, we look through the obituaries in Herald. I mean, that would be one way to,
Everybody doesn't put them in.
well, not everybody,
Put no bit.
we're not,
I was gonna suggest you could just pull our website, the funeral home, but everybody doesn't do an obit.
yeah,
Oh, we don't all use your funeral home.
Right.
yeah, we're probably gonna miss somebody at some point.
Yeah.
Does that mean that we just don't do it?
No, I don't, I was just like,
Yeah.
is Legacy a good resource?
Legacy's a really good resource.
Maybe that's.
Unfortunately, you can type in Randolph,
That certificate.
you're gonna get Braintree, Brookfield.
That's in-house.
So it doesn't sort that way. And again, they're not all in there. The only place you're gonna find them all is at the registrar, that registrar.
We can get them
Then
right
you
out
can
of the, we can get them right out of Tammy's office.
If they died in Randolph, right? But if they didn't,
Or not, every town clerk can now do every town. That's certificates can be issued anywhere, just like birth certificates.
I'm thinking like sometimes we have somebody who is extremely active in the community and they move to be with their son or daughter
Right.
in their later years needing care. So they would show as they passed in Timbuktu versus
Happens all the time.
Randolph,
Yeah.
like,
Happens all the time.
And I'm
just trying to
thinking-
figure out how
I'm
we.
thinking we could do a call for it, like a call for recognitions, call the artist is what I wanna say, but I don't know how to say it in a proper way, but then we might get a foot too. How do we decide who's notable, who's not?
And,
Well,
you know,
we already
we
do
all
that
want
with
our
the
family
dedication
recognized.
too, right?
Yeah, but we pick one person,
I
it's
know,
not
but
just
when
like a whole
we pick one person, we're not picking somebody else. I'm sure there's, every year there's people who are deserving and remain unrecognized year after year. I don't know. I just hate to see us,
I mean, we can try it, see what happens. Right?
yeah.
We get a lot of people that complain that we're not.
I can tell you this, we had a recent death where the family chose not to publish obituary. We got angry calls, screaming, that we hadn't published this person's obituary. We said, family doesn't want us to. And they called us every name, but.
But phone.
And there were several calls like that over, and it's a,
Yeah.
that's,
It's a
that's a
tough
tough one. I'd be careful. Great idea, I just don't know how you capture it.
I definitely like the family you mentioned. I don't know much about them.
Sweet.
Would you be willing to write that down?
Judy will help me. Judy's neighbors.
Awesome. I'm in favor of that.
You know who I was thinking is Sam Lincoln. Let's Sam on.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Right.
Have Sam.
It's Sam Lincoln to write it.
Oh.
Yeah, he did
Writing.
write that.
He is
knows
really
the
good at writing.
family.
Okay, I'm in favor of that person. Do we need a motion or?
So have we ever done it as a motion?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think you just agreed by consensus the last couple of years.
Seem like they.
Yeah, does it seem?
Yeah.
Well, does anybody else, is everyone else in agreement? Okay.
So I'll work on that one and Judy and Sam, who's gonna try to find the list of people to recognize.
Do we want to try it? I mean, Tom just told us that it can be a little hornet's nest.
I think it could be, but I think it could be a good thing too. I don't know.
We used to have the history list
we would.
in the paper every year, the Herald, list them all by month.
Like, we'd have to
Because it's done by what month was what.
like, we think it's a good
Still
thing,
do
but
that,
like,
do that.
they might not.
No, as the person who wrote it, no.
Also, yeah, that's.
And I wrote it for
I
him.
kind of like it being living person.
Yeah, I think if we want, yeah, I think we should pick one person or one family or something every time, it might be better. I mean, we did already hit, sorry, that's not what I was say, we already did mention some of those people. In past reports, so.
All right, we good on that one?
Yeah.
We have a water wastewater allocation for 34 Pleasant Street.
You have a formal sheet, Chris sent it at the end of the day, felt guilty, but it doesn't say anything any different than what you have, other than 530 for additional water allocation, 1,000 for the additional wastewater allocation, 200 gallons per day each. Because they're going to turn the upstairs into a 2-bedroom apartment. Both systems have plenty of capacity. And hold the chair of the Water Wastewater Advisory Committee, and his agreement was it can shoot straight to here.
Motion to approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Managers report.
Snow removal, as I mentioned, will be Monday morning. That's our first voyage of the year with that. We're still working with contractor, the engineer, and others on the lightning strike up at the North Hills that fried a whole bunch of stuff. One of the well A transducer has proven problematic, and it turns out it might actually not be a lightning issue, it might be an installation issue. 185 and 200 are different numbers. It's supposed to be at 200. So it's gonna be reinstalled, and so it's in the water now, so it's functioning as it should. There haven't been any overall issues since the lightning strike, since the initial repairs, but. So we're still working through that. It seems like it's going to be, if it's gonna be a conflict, it's gonna be between the engineering folks who designed it. There's a question over whether or not the specs were specific to which elevation you were supposed to measure the wire length from. And the contractor has a different opinion, but it's in the water, it's working. We're happy for now, but it needs to be deeper than what it is. The budget and the capital improvement programs are gonna be probably 90% of my focus for the next 3 weeks. So between now and the 8th, I'll try to make sure we get everything else done that we can get done, that we need to get done. Till January 2nd. Still hanging my shingle outside that door. Those are the things. We got grant awards, we'll have them in January for approval. We got a municipal planning grant award to support the town plan process. The rec path grant that came before you in September, October timeframe to improve the path network over at the rec field, that got approved.
Oh, nice.
Just found out today on that one.
That was really a cool project.
And then we are likely to get some money through that park and ride program. It depends. It's a weird division between the number of applicants, and I think there were 3 of us, if I remember. Right, so that'd be about $50,000 each. Which will help.
And ACC, the downtown transportation, that could help with sidewalks too.
Yeah.
While we have downtown designation.
Oh, yeah, move fast. Yeah. Doesn't expire, and I don't think it goes away unless we fail to have the entity or we say, no, thank you. There's only one that had it, that I can think of that had it. They voluntarily gave it up. And just got it back. Now it's Morris. I don't know if they want to be called Morristown or Morrisville, but the Morrises.
Yeah.
And I can't remember why they gave it up. I think it was a particular conflict unique to them.
And the timeline with RSVC, is they're completely done in June, or is it gonna be before then?
What I've heard is that that's one of the goals of June, July. They'll have to have the entity that takes over the housing. I don't know where they're at in that process. The revolving loan fund will probably pull out long before that moment, and the downtown group at any point, once we figure out a path, I think it could move. If it's a new group, it might just be the timeline for incorporation of both, and whatever it has to be, legal status. But that was the plan that was described to us initially in the room down there, was that by July.
By July. Maybe.
So it feels like every time I report on what I heard on the original plan, I've heard a different spots and I've been directed as to that's not what we heard, but
Right, so we don't really.
heard it 4 or 5 times. So it's an echo, I guess, in my ears, possible. I believe that's what it is. That's what it keeps coming up in housing conversations with the state. Different little side conversation. Could be something different at the end, but that seems to be the path. And the Salisbury Square grant, we're still hanging on to it. There's stuff the state needs to do. There's stuff that needed to be added to the grant system. Mike Tarrant has it. He's doing the legal beagle thing with it. So we'll see how long, if it can wait till the 8th, we'll schedule it for then, but we may need a special depending on what comes back. And the plan is still that we're the grant. We keep the sub-grant agreement. It's a sub-grant agreement, essentially in name only. Payment is made to the final payee, probably one of the contractors, so it skips that middle step. So it gets around any of those security concerns with payment. We won't pay up front and then seek reimbursement. The idea is that our ICDC and its equity partners, probably them, file for reimbursement. State reviews, we review, everybody okays it. The state issues us payment. We issue payment to final payee, and then that closes that. We're aiming for one payment of that grant rather than. But there was some concern on their end about timing, resources that I didn't quite follow. We are honestly doing everything we can do to keep moving forward. We're waiting for the other actors to do their pieces, and so once they come together, we'll be able to.
Did we get clarity from the state that we're not gonna be seen in a different role with the money passing through us? Because my concern is, we are the grantee and we're issuing the check to the contractor, but we didn't bid this project. We didn't do the Davis-Bacon. We didn't do any of the role that the person paying the contractor should do. So I just wanna make sure we've got it clear. So we don't do this and then they come back and say, you didn't meet the requirements. Pay it back.
The sub-grant agreement tied to the revised grant agreement should spell out that they're responsible for compliance still. I have not read that dense.
I got through a few pages of it and I'm just like, man, I just can't focus on this right now.
That's on the reading list. I just haven't.
It'd be worth reading with your grant background too. I'm gonna read it, remind us. My concern is, did we change roles? Yeah. When we write the check for the contractor. I'm sure glad I would agree. So.
We've had that periodically just.
Check boxes and sign their names without reading.
Yeah.
Turns out.
Staffing changes sometimes throw us off, so if we can get it embedded in there somewhere that. Yeah, the minimum points back to the responsibility. I mean, they might agree to that. They've been hesitant to put it. In the actual grant. At the end of the day, I don't think they want to take their hook out in terms of like, there's gotta be somebody they can.
Right, but it shouldn't be the town.
This one might be a special, I'd be surprised at the end of the day if they didn't work something with us, just because this is such a weird situation. But.
Not to like Captain Obvious here, but they need us more than we need them right now. Right, they need the town to step in and play a role different than what we were supposed to. So the tax credits are still coming into this project and the whole funding mix still works. But at the same time, they can't put the town in a bad spot to make that happen, where we have the risk of the feds coming in, looking at how the program works for our auditor. Like, we're gonna now require a full audit because of this dollar amount passing through us, and does that kick us into this audit where somebody says, hey, wait a minute, you didn't do any of your contracting process.
You followed none of your procurement policy, yeah.
And now we're like in a mess.
We're still hopeful there's a way to pay VHFA at the end of the day as a final payment. That's come up a couple of times as an idea. Because they're a construction loan. Essentially, we make a loan payment rather than a payment to a contractor.
If it's eligible for the grant.
Right. So that's come up a couple times, but we haven't really crossed that
Not to
threshold.
be the negative one, I just don't wanna see us get tripped up
Yeah,
trying to make this happen and go away, and then we do something that brings it back to our doorstep when the rest of them are out of it.
it's been an interesting collection of individuals and an interesting set of conversations to be in, those housing.
Yeah.
This particular project.
Is there any chance the contractor was like on a list of pre-approved contractors?
No,
I think this is their preferred, I don't know what they did for bidding, but it's the same contractor that did Randolph House, that's done a few other projects, so.
I think the bidding might be. I don't know what their procurement policy is and how that all works, but. And I haven't looked at all the documents, but I do, from what I understand, there's no big construction plans and all that went out. For a whole bunch of people to bid on. Yeah, I know. That's why I wanna be doing the.
This is what people miss with the whole tax thing, like, just take the free money. Whew. It is not
There's a lot of
always free.
strings.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pieces to it and. And then when you get into this mess well, we're not in it really.
It's a pass through, but whatever, yeah.
We, the ones, the one time when the lawyer was slow reviewing is a good thing, right? Like, we're like, yes, thank God.
We're in a good spot out of a quirk of timing, I mean, really.
You have a legal matter for executive?
I don't think so. I think I can tell you, we've been threatened to be sued over an unpaid water bill, but it'll be all right.
But we do have to go, we do need it.
We don't, we were gonna talk about something that could wait to the 8th if you guys are good with it.
I'm okay with staying longer if it's something that needs to be taken care of.
It's not an emergent thing, I'm working on it anyway, so,
I think we do need to go in though.
yeah,
We do have a personnel thing to talk about.
that's what's listed there, those two options, so.
Script here.
Teach me not to bring.
I move that executive is necessary.
And
Prudent pursuant to, yeah.
One VSA,
you do. We don't.
313A, 1A contracts, and one VSA 313A3 personnel evaluation. There's something that I move, I motion.
You usually say I motion, so it would.
Okay, I
Where do
motion.
you say I move?
I guess in order. Okay, I think I said that in order, thank you.
Second?
Yeah, she seconded it, yeah, yeah.
Sorry, didn't hear you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.